Welcome to Monza, the Autodromo di Monza, the Autodromo di Nazionale. It's the fourth round of the 2024 Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS. This is the fourth of the rounds for the Endurance Series. We started at Paul Ricard, Spa 24 Hours, Nürburgring, and now everyone has produced a different winner. We have no idea what this one is going to bring. 52 cars lined up in the pit lane about to come out to play. My name is Bruce Jones, and alongside John Watson, we're ready for a lot of bedding in, but there's something new for the drivers. The track's been changed for this year.
Well, welcome to Monza, crowd favourite, one of my favourites. And yes, Bruce, you're right. There have been a number of changes made to this circuit. First of all, weather, 16.8 ambient, 19.4 track temperature. I mean, it's humidity. Look how high that humidity is now. Is that going to mean rain? Or is it just the mixture of the cloud base being low and the pressure being high? Whatever it is, it's clammy, but the ambient and track temperatures are good for quick times, and quick times are something I think we're going to see a lot of, because some of the changes here at Monza for this year involve resurfacing, and you can see there the exit from the Ascari down into Parabolica or Michele Alboreto curve, whichever you choose to call it, has been resurfaced, but principally a lot of the curbing, in fact virtually all the curbing around the circuit has been leveled out or changed. And for example, coming into the Ariante Vallone and then the Ascari, that 3-point chicane, the curbing there is much flatter, so drivers are able to straight line the entry much more than previously. And this, I think it was yesterday, the GT2s, when they were running, they managed to lap up to 3 seconds a lap quicker than they did 1 year ago. And we can anticipate a similar kind of incremental increase here in this pre-practice session. And of course, getting into qualifying, well, to give you an example, look, going back 1 year, qualifying time for this race was 1:45.9, and the fastest lap in the race was 1:47. So I think those lap times are going to be obliterated over the course of the 3 hours on Sunday.
You think so? I mean, traffic might be a problem for some of the drivers here trying to get a time in this morning, but 2 hours to go and play, 52 cars. It is going to be busy out there on the track, but one thing I absolutely love about the championship this year, you look at the top 5 crews in the championship, and it's 5 different manufacturers. We've got Come To You Racing with Matteo Drudi, Marcus Sorensen and Nicky Tim in their Aston Martin. Second in the championship is an Audi, which is the ACA crew. Oh, well, let's take a look at the cars down in the pits. We've got a lot of changes this weekend, a lot of drivers coming in and coming out, so the championship is moving around and drivers are very busy indeed. But at this point, it's all eyes as we sort of go into the funnel heading to the final round. But here, a good result here at Monza could almost put it in the bag for Come To You Racing's race-leading Aston Martin crew. And in fact, one of the Come To You cars, possibly two of them are ready to lead out of the pits. 2 hours, this is free practice if you're just tuning in to see what's happening here at Monza. But that view down in the pit lane and the fantastic images reflected in the windows of the media centre and the VIP suites above the pits, it does really sort of augment the feeling of just how busy it is down there.
Well, I've always felt Monza's a very special place, and you know, you're just looking around, you entered the circuit, you've got the old tribune, which is where we're based above that in our commentary position, then facing to the pits, and then the revision that has been made over years, the improvements that have been made at Monza, both the sort of the areas where the teams base themselves, where they have to work in. The racetrack itself has changed, you know, enormously, because up until 1971, chicane, I think they thought that was a cocktail you got when you went out for an evening's drinking. So what you've got now are 3 chicanes around the circuit. They came in 72 and beyond, and they've been revised and altered and whatever. I would love to see a current GT3 car run around Monza without a chicane. They're getting up to about 280 clicks, the quickest cars, before they break into the first chicane. Imagine going in 285, maybe 290 at the Curva Grande, the big, long right-hand corner that used to be a challenge for any driver and car. Now it's just easy peasy, flat out.
Yeah, I mean, it really did deserve its name. Curva Grande. It would have been fantastic, but it's still a circuit that has brilliant flow. There's plenty of width as well for a lot of overtaking potential, but that's all it is as you head down towards the first chicane, because we know if you go in wide, it could be diminishing returns. You go in tight, you're slower. But right now, it's about all these cars going out, getting a feel for this track. They've already had a couple of practice sessions.
Well, there's the first glimpse you get of the curbing on the inside. As you come down the Ratifiglio, that's the first chicane. Each chicane has got a name, the Ratifiglio, then the Roggia, the second chicane, and then the Vallone, or then the Ascari. It's sort of it's a 3-part. It's more like an open corner in 3 parts. So I always just call it the Ascari chicane. I think that sort of is a tidier way of saying it.
Most certainly. So busy for everybody. That's Herbeth Motorsport, 91. They've run Porsches for many years. Ralph Bone will be taking it out, German racer. They're running in the bronze class. And also, John, just going down, we've got 52 cars. Bronze class, really well supported. 19 cars, the same as the top class, which is pro. The car we're looking at now is second in the championship. That was the Alex Arco, Ricardo Fella, Christopher Haase Attempto Racing Audi. That's been, again, really consistent. But the car so many people are looking at is the BMW that was fastest on Thursday. And, of course, this weekend it's got Maxime Martin on board. We've got Raffaele Marciello as well. Let's double check which of those is in the car. Actually, it's Marciello, MAR on the windscreen. But it's Valentino Rossi who draws the fans. They were already pouring into the circuit this morning in the blue and yellow. Yes,
that was the car that was quickest in that three-page practice session. And in fact, the fastest lap by that car, 1:45.2, eclipsed by just about half a second the qualifying time from 1 year ago. So in a session that was really just about go out, run, give your drivers time behind the wheel, already we're seeing cars, GT3 cars, we're watching here right now, going quicker than we did in qualifying. So again, look, on the exit of the Ascari chicane, how much flatter the curbing is. And it's in a GT3 car, because these cars can ride the curbs more or less more easily than a sort of highly strung single-seater. It's making the entry into the Ascari, the transition to the right, then the exit, almost, it's not quite flat, but it's pretty much flat from the point they enter into the first part of that three-part chicane.
I really think, as we're looking down through the field, it feels like a race already. 52 cars, I think pretty much about 48 of them are out on the circuit already. Nose to tail around this fabulous flowing 3.6-mile circuit. And in and among those, just had sight of Liaro Moncini. That's the young Italian crew for Trezor Attempto Racing, going so well in the gold class in their Audi. And a few cars still sitting in the pit lane, including one of the favourites of the fans here, AF Corsa Francorchamps Motors, a red and yellow Ferrari. Had a slight change of crew this time because Vincent Abril has joined that alongside Alessio Rivera and the solid gold Alessandro Pierguidi. So they've got to be among the favourites. And Vincent Abril normally drives the sister car, number 71. He's moved to 51 this weekend.
Yeah, it's been a lot of sort of movement between drivers. A lot of it is due actually to conflicting championships around the world. So some drivers have been Andrea Caldarelli and others who would be in the Lynx Ferrari. They are overseas and their places have been taken by other team members. So it's going to be a busy weekend globally for GT3 racing.
Well, I think if you're a top-level GT3 drivers, and we have the very, very best here, your Canada could almost have a race every weekend. But certainly for Fanatec GT, it's coming to the fine point of the championship. We've still got the final sprint rounds in Barcelona in October, and then heading to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia for the final race, a 6-hour race on that ultra-fast circuit in Jeddah. That's still in the pipeline.
I'm not persuaded that's going to be a tougher race for the competitors or for the commentary team, because nobody's been to Jeddah in a GT3 car, so looking forward to see this lap. Drudy in the Aston Martin 007, personal best sectors 1 and 2. So will that put the Aston already? Michael Grenier, who's gone quickest in the 777 Mercedes. So Drudy's time puts him second quickest, 1:47.3 against a 1:46.9. And that's Marcello, who's actually popped up now into. So I think the Grenier time, I don't know.
It's something
changing literally as cars come across start-finish line.
But look, the fastest time, did you say it was 1:41 yesterday? That was 1:46.9. So the pace is going to come as the heat comes in the tyres. Humid, yes, not particularly warm as yet. Checking track temperature, still under 20 degrees. But the heat will get into the Pirellis. But the come-to-you racing Aston Martin, victory in the Spa-Francorchamps in the 24 hours. The big ones, 007, coolest number in the field, of course. Just an incredibly strong driver lineup. You know, I'm now fully accustomed to Matteo Drudy. We're riding on board right now, being an Aston Martin driver after so long with Audi. But Marco Sorensen and Nicky Team, you cut them in half. They've got Aston Martin written large. So much success for them over the years. But for the Belgian team, Come To You Racing, it really has been a fantastic season for them.
Well, there is the Aston tucked right under the tail of the Mercedes-AMG GT3 as it goes through Seriguilo. That's the curve. We never hear it mentioned very often. It's not even a corner. It's barely a squeeze in the steering wheel. Now into the Ascari, the first part, you can see how much flatter the curbing is in the middle. And here at the exit, you can take chunks of the curb at the inside, which helps stop any car deflection. So the Aston Martin has been challenged by the 46 Raffaele Marciello all over the back of Matteo Drudy, and he's going to try and get that toe. He's not going to be able to do anything into Parabolica because it's difficult to pass there. unless you're absolutely alongside. But here now, watch and see whether the Aston Martin has got the legs of the BMW on the quickest part of the circuit. Cars getting up to around about 280 kilometers per hour. That would be the quickest car. And yesterday, it wasn't just the 46 that was quick, Bruce. The sister car, the 32, Charles Weerts and Sheldon van der Linde, and of course Dries van Thor, that was within a thousandth of a second of the quickest 46.
So now let's move around the order a little bit. That was the car we'd been looking at, the number 7 Aston Martin. Now we're riding with the Get Speed Mercedes. This is running in the silver class. Yannick Mettler, James Kell and Anthony Bartone. Anthony, who comes from that American drag racing family, but he's chosen, he prefers competing with some corners ahead of him. And again, sorting it out around the circuit. And it's James Kell, the British driver, at the wheel, bouncing over the curbing there. John, there's a question of how much curbing can you take in some of the chicanes. And in the background,
there's an example of how much you do not want to take. And that was a real scary moment coming out of the second chicane down at the very end of Roger, getting it all wrong. The Barwell, so that's James, and that's them jumping around so quickly. And there's a Porsche gone off likewise, exit of Lesmo 2. So that's going to, is it buried in the gravel, or will that be able to recover itself? It may well be a full course yellow, and ultimately we may see the session stop to get that car, because it's in a hazardous position on the exit of Lesmo 2.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think that's a Lion speed car. Yeah, Patrick Kolb on board. And yeah, it's a fairly blind entry to the corner if someone is just tucked around in the gravel on the outside.
Red flag.
Red flag. I was looking in the background, there was a light to tell us there, but German racer Patrick Kolb, routed as looped. But again, I think as much as anything, it's not just lack of heat in the tyres. No, they've got the heat now. It's there's so much traffic on the track, so many people trying to lay down a time, and he could have just been momentarily distracted.
Well, he's in the gravel. He's got to be picked up and pulled out of the gravel. In the period of, 3 minutes we've been talking, we've seen who was quickest when we were talking. Was it Marcello?
Well, it was Marcello, but
now there's about 10 cars have exceeded in the quickest car right now. Here you go. Enrique Chavez in the number 34 Aston Martin. Watch and see. Or just lost the back end of the car. Just simply not enough grip. The track, of course, a little bit maybe still dirty. I don't know. I thought there was rain last night. I'm not sure. It went to bed early, so it could have come down later in the night. So the track is still a little bit clean or green around the exit, possibly a little bit wide too early on the exit of the Lesmo 2, and consequently, if you lose traction, there's not an awful lot you're going to be able to recover. And of course, now that gravel has been reintroduced to the majority of sort of FIA Grade 1 circuits around the world, if a car goes off into the gravel, it's got to be removed. Unlike in the days when you had that sort of the tarmac runoff, which at that time was the favoured way of arresting a car. It meant there was no gravel on the track and the car could make its own way back. So the benefit of gravel is, of course, it brings a car to a stop very much more quickly.
No, absolutely. Right, number 9, we're looking Maxi Goetz, veteran GT3 racer.
Gravel in turn 7. We will restart the session as soon as possible.
Okay, that's good news from the race director. But looking at the Boots and VDS Mercedes there, that's got a new driver this weekend. Sergio Seti Camara, for so many years racing in Formula E, is joining us, Thomas Drouet, and what a guide he's got in Maxi Goetz there. Good to see the Mustang. I still love the look of that car. Christian Mies, so long an Audi driver, but he's really nailed his colours to the Mustang mast. I think next year will be the season they really, really find their feet.
I've christened the Mustang Such Sweet Thunder, after the wonderful album Vinyl, for those who like actually listening to music. Not digital, but analog, vinyl. Such Sweet Thunder by the Duke Ellington. Wonderful album.
Do you want to just sing us the chorus? No, anyhow, let's look at the cars in the pit lane. But yeah, listen out. John's got a very, very good ear for music. So for a lot of these crews, it's all about just, well, you might as well come in for a chat. But as we heard from the race director, the red light is still flashing on the start-finish straight. But as soon as possible, these cars will be passed out. So it really is just a quick chance the drivers say, hear a little from their engineers. But they hadn't really got into their stride. 3 flying laps. And it did look as though, actually, Arthur Rougier was going to go to the top. He's second fastest. We're still about 4 seconds down on the ultimate pace. Right, we've seen one Boots and VDS Mercedes. Let's take a look at the other. This is car number 10. Cesar Gazo at the wheel. Roy Mayu has an Aurélien Panis, one of the many second-generation racers. They've been handling that in the silver class this year. So let's just take a look. Just remember the time, 1 minute 45.365. It's an Aston Martin at the top. It's Enrique Chavez, one of a handful of Portuguese drivers in the championship this year. He's sharing with Valentin Haas-Clos, who's one of the driver changes this weekend, and David Pittard. So that should go fairly well.
I mean, Bruce, only a few minutes ago, we were looking at the number 7, Matteo Drudi, Aston Martin. It is now, in the space of the 4 laps, 3 laps, 2 laps even, it's dropped from quickest down to 20th. Such as the acceleration of pace of those cars that came out maybe a lap or 2 later. Everybody more or less, I think, started on a brand new set of sticker Pirellis. They'll run those tires through the remainder of the session, and that is in part why we're seeing these very quick times early in the session.
Yeah.
Where ordinarily you'd expect to see the times coming towards the end of a session when a racetrack, has been essentially cleaned up. The rubber that has maybe been washed away if there was rain has been laid back down again. So 48, now there's a car in contention. If ever there was a car in contention, Lucas Ara, has he just got out?
He has just got out.
Yeah,
yes. I think a few driver changes going on there. He would have, done the early. Actually, for a team, it's given them a chance for the drivers to experience what. Oh, that's good. The number 80 Lion Speed car has been extracted, so they can sweep up the gravel. You do not want gravel on the exit of the second list, mode.
It is shedding some gravel as it was jigging around to get back.
Okay, let's listen to some team radio from car number 3, Get Speed Mercedes.
Any complaint about the rear?
No, at this stage, no. I didn't really get a clean lap, to be perfectly honest. I was still getting up to speed and then red flags. So, I don't want to comment just yet, but it was pretty stable.
Okay, and the front end feeling was more related with the tires than with the balance itself, right?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both, balance and tyre. The front end still felt a bit understeery and a bit weak on the new tyre, basically.
Okay, so that was the thoughts of James Keller, and I totally get it. He doesn't want to commit to too much because you can imagine, with so much traffic, just getting to feel the first lap, the second lap picking up pace, but still tripping over rivals. Quite right.
What they're doing is making a comparison possibly to what they had yesterday. And the first question the engineer said about the back of the car was the back stable. So maybe yesterday they had a little bit of sort of snap oversteer or something in some parts of the circuit. That seems to be calmer. But James Kell didn't want to say emphatically yes or no because he's only probably done one flying lap on a circuit that will drive itself in to a different condition to that it is presently in. And that's the changes that teams have got to be on top of. And one of the things teams tend to try and avoid doing is follow the circuit. So you end up saying, oh, the car's understeering or it's oversteering. So the engineer starts to try and adjust whatever the car needs. And then you get lost. So sometimes if you leave your car untouched all the way through the session, the changes that the car will go through are more to do with how the circuit is changing, and it's often the best way to go. You can chase a car and end up more confused than you were at the beginning.
Well, one team that's got the smile, but it's only going to be a temporary one, is this one. Car number 34, Walkenhorst Motorsport. They're Aston Martin, top of the table at the moment. As we said, the lights go green. We're going out onto the circuit again. It's a 2-hour free practice session here on the Saturday morning at Monza. So far, the number 34, Aston Martin, top of the pile. But the drivers all talk about not tenths of a second between them. We're talking hundredths when we get to the sharp end of this practice session. Everybody has laid down times, all building towards pre-qualifying. Then we'll go to qualifying. Around Monza, the increments between the fastest and the next fast, and the car in 20th will be well under a second.
Yes, and it's not the shortest of circuits. We've got it's a 5.7 kilometre, 3.6 mile circuit, 11 corners effectively. The corners are such as the Serraguilo, it's a curve, they don't count it as a corner. Final corner used to be known as Parabolica, was then renamed after late great Italian driver Michele Alboreto, but I think most people still refer to it as Parabolica. It's the name that's been there since the instigation. This circuit is one of 3 of the historic permanent racetracks in the world. So you've got Monza, built open 1922. The other circuit is in North America, Indianapolis, would you believe, the circuit, the oval, not the interior road circuit. Have you got a clue what the third?
I certainly do.
Andrew, you've read your notes then, haven't you?
No, I knew it anyhow. It's Brooklands.
Correct. But of course, Brooklands was requisitioned in Second World War, and then that was the end of motor racing around Brooklands, famous for its 500-mile race around that enormous bank circuit in the middle of Surrey.
And famed also for a few cars bouncing over the top of the bank corners. But that was then, this is now. But Monza prevails, 1922. We've moved on 102 years. It's still as valid now as it was then. Right, drivers getting some heat in their tyres. It was get going, try all over again. A couple of BMWs there showing Team WRT and now Rover Racing just coming into the shot. And again, this wonderful mixture of manufacturers. Lamborghini, followed by McLaren, followed by Aston Martin, all phenomenal lanes. But let's go for a lap with the number 163 Lamborghini. That's very much in the mix every time it goes out onto circuit, and they've had a really, really strong season so far. And it's the Lamborghini shared by Frank Pereira, Marco Mappelli and Jordan Pepper. And again, they've been rock solid in the championship. So let's take a look. John, talk us through coming into the first chicane.
So down into the first chicane, Frank Pereira behind him. This car currently is 6th quickest, time of 1:46.1. So it'll be its first flying lap that he is now going on to. This is the entry and the sweep through Curva Grande. Fantastic corner, especially when there was no chicanes. You really knew, and also in the good old days, of course, they didn't have aero on the car, so it was tippy-toe all the way through. Down into the second chicane. It's the exit you've got to be careful of. You run the curb, you get into the gravel, then you're all over the place. Then the short acceleration down into Lesmo, one of the least altered of the two Lesmo corners here at Monza. Just again, the exit has been pinched a little bit to make the exit speed slower. Bigger brake going into Lesmo 2. Watch again on the outside. We saw the Porsche, the land speed Porsche in there getting caught just when the back swung around. Then the run from here all the way down under the bank part of the circuit. That we're going under a bridge, but that is actually part of the original banking. There's a two-part circuit. Then hard on the brakes up into the Ascari. Now, how much flatter is it entering in the middle? It's flat as a pancake. And then the exit going on to the second quickest part of the racetrack. The run from here down to Parabolica. So BMW passing BMW, but that's a slow car being overtaken by the 46. So wait to see where Frank Pereira will end up. He's got, well, his times are down in the first two sectors, but I think that's the first flying lap. So it's a reassessment of where we temporarily finish with the red flag, and then comes out of Parabolica, picking up speed 250, 260, 270. So this lap 146.3. It's not a bad lap in fairness, but it's not a lap that would be where Frank Pereira will be looking.
No, and they've done so well. They took their results for 11th, 5th and 1st at Nürburgring. They come here as the latest winners. But let's move around the field a little bit more and look at number 51. It's one of the three AF Corsa Ferraris. Francorchamps Motors as well. Alessio Rivera, again, bouncing over the curbs at the first chicane and spacing it out through the corner that still, to my eye, is my favourite corner on the circuit. The Curva Grande, the cars just look right as they come through this long right-hander.
So currently, this car, which is totally out of position for a 51 AF Corsa Ferrari, it's 44th quickest. It's irrelevant, because that time was set before we had the red flag. Probably the team didn't go out immediately anyway, and they just go out, do the initial run, maybe come straight back in the pits. We do what is called a spanner check, just a quick look around to see all the work carried out yesterday and last evening by the team. There were no nuts or bolts left loose. I've had that happen. Believe me, it can happen even from the best teams in the world. But a personal best by half a second for Rivera in Sector 1. I would expect to see that level of improvement, because currently, well, he's dropped from 44th down to 45th. If he continues picking up half a second in these three sectors, he'll gain 1.5. Well, he's picked up 8/10 in the middle sector. So he's en route to put himself, I would say, comfortably into the top 20. And if he finishes this final sector down out through the exit of Ascari, then this run, he's got clear air. He might get some aerodynamic benefits from the Aston Martin, the car directly in front of him. But he still hasn't got tire temperature. He's doing that to try and get more sort of tire core temperature, not surface temperature, core temperature, through Parabolic, and lets the car run out to the exit. Just kisses the white line as he comes through. Comes across start-finish line. Let's see where he goes. He's 46th right now. He's gone 22nd, so he's just outside the top 20.
Yeah, winding it up. He actually had clear line. We've got a car in the gravel just here, in car number 99, off into the dirt, and that's Tracer Attempt. So that's the car second in the championship. Christopher Haase, Alex Arca and Ricardo Feller.
Red flag.
Red flag. Now that's Christopher Haase, of all people.
Of all people.
Of all people, I repeat myself, of all people. What did he do? Now, we don't know whether that was a consequence of being on his own, or maybe he was trying to drive around a slower car. And that's the first car I've seen in the Ascari, the middle part of the Ascari chicane. So, again, Christopher Haase in the gravel.
Yeah, just not accustomed to that from Christopher, but we don't know. He was 11th fastest at the time. Everybody really effectively winding up to put in a proper flying lap at the second attempt. You can see from the marks in the gravel in the direction of travel, fully side on there, John.
Yeah, and look at the gravel behind on the racetrack. Look how much gravel has been kicked. That's got to have to be, I think, cleared away as well. So let's look and see. Oh, he lost it all on his own. All on. Now that is strange. Now the back end just broke away. And I would have caught Christopher Haase completely off guard. He would have had nothing. He couldn't do much about it. Once it gone, the pendulum effect of a mid-engine, rear-engine GT car just takes over. Again, maybe the tyre temperature was still a little bit below optimum. Tyre pressures might have also been a little bit down. But it's the gravel, not that he's buried in, it's the gravel directly behind him. You can see it's still, there's a line beginning to appear, but I hate seeing that level of gravel on a racetrack.
Yeah. Let's take a look. Riding on board. Oh, super slow-mo. Riding the curbs, John? It works for some.
Well, those curbs have been modified, believe it or not, compared to the original. This is, I think, might be down at the first chicane. So the Porsche behind being a little bit more economical, not running the curb so aggressively as the 51 Ferrari. And look at the vertical movement as the car sort of bounces its way slowly back through the exit of the first chicane.
Now, quick corners as well. We saw that
there too.
Yeah, we're looking at Rivera, and he just dipped a wheel. Many drivers are doing that, but that's going to the edge a little bit further, and you're over the edge. That's what happened to Patrick Kolb spun going into the second Lesmo, but a lot of drivers really kissing the boundaries.
In the meantime, while we've been watching all this action, individual cars and teams, Marcello has gone up second place in the 46 BMW. That's the car that was quickest in the prepaid session yesterday, so a 145.5. He's a quarter of a second away from Enrique Chavez in the 34 Aston Martin. That's a strong run from Chavez. Did that time early, and it's a very, very well, nobody's really challenged him subsequently.
No, I know it's been a little bit stop-start. Looking down into the pit lane, it's very, very tight indeed. If you have 30 cars, it's quite busy down there. We have 52 cars playing in this fourth of the 5 endurance rounds in the Fanatec GT European Series. Car 63, very, very much in the mix, one of a handful. This is the Iron Lynx car that Mirko Bortolotti, Edoardo Mortara and Leonardo Pulcini. You might say, hold on, that's not the normal lineup, but that's because Matteo Caroli and Andrea Caldarelli are racing elsewhere, but really, really strong super subs there. Edoardo Mortara goes incredibly well if you put him on the tight confines of Macau, but he's pretty quick here as well, and no flies on Pulcini either. So last few cars still making their way back into the pit lane, including one of the AF Corsa Ferraris, but for everybody else, the cars are straight, and they're just waiting for the signal. I don't know how long it's going to take for the number 99 car to be withdrawn from the gravel, Christopher Haase's Audi, but that's one they need to get back,
absolutely,
because they're second in the championship.
But
John,
look,
could
Bruce,
I just talk
just behind,
about
sweepers going up to clear the racetrack. We've had, 24 minutes running. We've had 2 red flags already, which is not really what we had thought we might see.
Session will restart at 9:29.
Okay, 9:29. This session will restart.
That's in just over 5 minutes' time, and well, a lot to play for. Sorry, the Bortolotti car, by the way, with the 2 new teammates, that's 6th in the championship. At the moment, the Aston Martin, the come to you, number 7 Aston Martin, has 54 points. We've got 26 points to play for here. That's 25 for victory, 18, 15, 12, down to 1 point for 10th. Plus 1 for pole position. Doesn't just put you at the front of the grid, it helps. But their lead is 15 points. It's tidy. And if they could put in a rock solid, if they can put in a win today, that puts them on the verge of the championship. But Christopher Haase shaking a bit more gravel, a lot more gravel, and a lot more after that. And
that's what you might call removable ballast.
Yes, that could have been used in Formula 1 years ago. I have no idea. But people out here dotted around this fabulous circuit. The busiest people of all are not the mechanics for now. It's the people, the marshals out on track.
And that's up at Lesmo too.
Yeah.
So all around the circuit, everybody's been flirting with the exit curbing. And those that have been a little bit too aspirational, let's put it that way, have gone into the gravel. This is one of the 2 cars driven by Christopher Haase, a driver who's as reliable as you ever would find in the paddock.
Well, let's go down and hear from the number 99 Audi crew. We won't speak to Christopher Haase, but Gemma has caught up with his teammates.
Boys, it's unusual to see Christopher go off quite as he did there. Was that a case of not enough heat in the tyres?
Could be, I don't know. Honestly, I didn't speak to him. I haven't spoken to my engineer so far, so we don't know. We just saw that the gravel bed is quite deep, so yeah, difficult to get out again.
Well, we've seen modifications at the circuit this weekend, and funnily enough, our camera guys around the circuits were saying that the gravel traps are very deep and there's a lot of gravel out there. You were saying this is exploratory purposes, a bit of education for the team.
Yeah, indeed. I think Hazi did the job. Otherwise, I would have done it now. But yeah, luckily he did it, and it's just coming back. So yeah, I think the gravel trap needs some replacement now. So we need some more gravel on track.
Well, we'll find out what happens once it gets out of the car. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're going to see, I think, quite a lot of gravel being placed onto the track, again, flirting with those curbs. And, of course, come the 3-hour event on Sunday, there's no reason to believe that we won't see cars, again, getting caught out in a corner and ending up in gravel. And then it'll be a full course yellow, a safety car to get that car extracted.
Certainly, so the mechanics are busy. Cars come in, cars come out. One car that hasn't actually set a time is the sister car to 158. It's number 159. It's one of the 3 McLarens from Garage 59. That's the one shared by Tom Gamble, Benji Goethe and Dean McDonald. But the other 51 cars have all been out on circuit. So a few cars sitting there without any rubber underneath, and that's Christopher Haase coming back in, and one of his teammates. I don't know if it's going to be Ricardo Feller or Alex Acker hopping on board. But you know what, in this 2-hour session, there's not too much of a rush. And certainly Trazer Atepto Racing, who have the extra gravel still there, know this car, this Audi, very, very well indeed. But that was most unusual, but I guess pushing on. And again, looking at the angle he went in, I was thinking, how did he get that way? And now having the tail come round completely was the only way it could get. There's the one that hasn't been out on the circuit, the 159. But Tom Gamble's sitting on board, the young British racer, waiting for his turn. So I think all is fine.
No, how Haase got there, we saw what happened. The back end just broke away, didn't have any traction whatsoever, which indicates either that somebody maybe had done something earlier in the lap and caught out the Audi, or Haase just simply made an error. And it would be interesting to hear from Christopher Haase his perspective of what actually, because he is such a professional, reliable, dependable driver, you don't expect ever to see him in a car in a gravel trap.
You certainly don't. I shouldn't have said all is fine for the 159 McLaren, because clearly the mechanics working away. It's something around the rear diffuse I can't see, but they're working in order. And this stop time, because the clock has stopped, and we're about to go back out again in, well, we've got 1 hour. The clock is actually still running. 1 hour 32 minutes. Sorry, it hasn't stopped. I've stopped. But that should be out fairly soon, one would feel. But the rest are going to storm out onto the circuit. And if we can have the dream of 2 or 3 consecutive flying laps, John, we'll see where the mark is. But at the moment, it's still sitting at 1 minute 45.3 seconds. That's Enrique Chavez with the bragging rights for now.
All right, so everybody's queuing up in the pit lane. Look on Michele Beretta, Hub Racing Team Mercedes. So he's sort of waiting. The line is led by one of the 2 Rover Racing BMWs. So just waiting for the circuit to go green. We were given a time by race director Alain Adin. And it'll be a mad charge from everybody in the pit lane to see if they can get out and hopefully get a time established. And undoubtedly there's opportunities for more stoppages. So that's Dorian Boccolacci in the Schumacher CLRT race team. Car lovers on the road 3.0.
So it's almost time for the pit lane to open in about 5 seconds.
4, 3, 2, 1, and green flag.
So as the cars are about to power out with one of the Rover Racing BMWs at the front of the queue, great manufacturer variety at the top, John. Aston Martin currently leading from BMW, from Audi, another BMW, Lamborghini, BMW, Aston Martin. Top Porsche, 8th place, Patrick Niederhauser. The top Ferrari in 9th.
Well, we know that I think Porsche, if I'm not mistaken, looking down at my notes, is probably the winningest manufacturer since the series has been coming here. So they've got a car which they know is quick. We saw how quick the car was when we were the last endurance round, which was at Nürburgring.
Nürburgring, yes, indeed. Now, of course, almost traditionally, this race, the event for Blancpain GT and subsequently Fanatec GT, when it comes to Monza, it's the start of the season. We've often had some unseasonal, well, maybe seasonal wet weather races. Racing in the middle of September. The sky's going to be blue today, a little bit patchy cloud at the moment, but different track conditions for sure. A little bit warmer, and that may help the teams.
Yes, it is sort of coming to the early phases of autumn. I mean, technically it might even be autumn, but here at Monza, you know, you're still in comfortable daytime conditions and even in the evening time likewise. But just what there is, the weather pattern over Central Europe is appalling, has been awful. And even northern Italy has been suffering from some of that severe rain and flooding. But hopefully none of it's going to make its way down as far south as Monza, which is of course near to Milan, which is the principal city in northern Italy.
So again, this great mix of manufacturers, Sky Tempesta Racing. That's a crew a lot of people look out for its Ferrari. The team has flitted back and forth between various manufacturers, but its happy home seems to be when racing with a prancing horse on its nose. And that's down at Eddie Cheever, Italian American racer, down in 33rd position. But I think we'll see that the cream rising to the top once we get a few flying laps on the board, consecutive flying laps. A few drivers already under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. That's such an awful one to do, but rules are rules.
Sam Dehaan in the BMW 34th place. The Ferrari behind Eddie Cheever is actually 33rd. So in terms of fastest times, the Ferrari is a fraction. So here on board with Eddie Cheever coming out of Parabolica. Sam Dehaan, you can just see him accelerating further down the road. So it doesn't feel as if the Ferrari is running. It's difficult to judge because you can't see the rev counter clearly to see whether the revs are and the speed, but if this is what 275 kilometers per hour looks like, it's sort of, there you see now also that aerial shot from the drone indicates how the adjustments in that first chicane have been carried out.
Fantastic high up shot. It really, really helps to give the picture. Also the angle of the car, the attitude of attack from the driver, but through the curve of Biasone, formerly known as Curva Grande, it's just this wonderful street. And then of course you've already got to consider where you want to place the car coming into the second chicane.
So we're getting now the speeds through the second chicane. I mean, accelerating pretty quickly down into Lesmo. So once you get the car exited, then on the gas and the car picks up the acceleration. Very impressive indeed. So out of Lesmo 1 getting up to 2, just under 200 clicks per hour into Lesmo 2. It's the exit there that you have to be really, really careful of. You might think you can push it through the first part of Lesmo 2, but the penalty is if you do, you run wide. Again, just moving around to get some tire temperature. Core tire temperature is the principal thing that drivers are looking for. The drone shot again looking at the Ascari chicane following the 93 Ferrari, the Sky Tempesta entry. Eddie Cheever on board and clean through the Ascari, and then the run down, closing a little bit onto the tail of Sam Dehaan in his BMW.
Yeah, the bronze class is really, in the endurance series, very much about Ferraris. This is the one we're looking at now, the Sky Tempesta.
Out and back, turn 10.
Just finish that thought. This is second in the bronze class in the endurance series for Cheever, Froggatt and Hui. AF Corsa Ferrari for Jeff, Louis Michiels and Andrea Bertolini is top, and the third one in the group is another AF Corsa Ferrari, which is the extra driver from the Spa 24 Hours. That's Tommaso Mosca.
So that time improved fractionally. Well, actually, he was 33rd, I beg your pardon. So he's actually dropped. He was 33rd quickest when this session got back underway. He's now down to 36th. And I'm just sure the timing and scoring is moving around. It's 37th because Adam Smalley in one of the garage 159 McLarens is just ahead of him. So everybody looking very happy indeed. Chris Froggatt and Jonathan Wee in the Sky Tempesta. Of course, they realise it don't look right because we're on the TV screen.
Interesting, just that height discrepancy. Chris Froggatt, very tall indeed. Jonathan not quite the same stature. Now, the treble 7, this is Al-Manar, this is Al-Faisal Al-Zubair. A few cars still dipping their wheels there, and they're running in the gold class and going very well in the gold class. And that's Dominic Baumann. A new driver this weekend, Brock Feeney, young Australian, coming up to play, get a feel of his car. Michael Grenier not here, but the young Australian, his first race in Europe, so this will be one on his bucket list. Monza, huge tick in the box.
It is a big tick in the box, but we've seen in the past a number of Australian drivers who race in their own national championships, extremely competitive championships they are. And they normally come across and make a pretty big impact pretty quickly.
Yeah, in fact, I saw him racing at the start of this year at Sepang in the GT World Challenge Asia.
Car 30, out and back, turn 8.
Okay, so drivers still having an awful lot of busy runs. Car number 30, it's the BMW we're looking at from WRT. It's the Oman racing car. Jens Klingman, Ahmad El Hati and Sam Dehaan.
Yeah, Sam Dehaan behind the wheel.
Right, let's see. Just outside the top 40 for Al-Zubair, but going very well in the gold class championship, second in that, just 9 points off the championship lead. So it's all about getting a feel as we work through the course of this meeting for them.
Just caught quickly, Eddie Cheever getting past Sam Dahan. He was behind him when they went out, and then he dropped back a little, then he's just caught up. So again, just to see where the improvements are coming. Eddie Cheever is now up to 23rd, having dropped down to 37th, I think it was. So that last lap has been a significant improvement for the Sky Tempesta 93 Ferrari.
Okay, the thing we need to see is Enrique Chavez is still top, but only by 5 thousandths of a second, because the 991 Century Motorsport BMW with Jake Dennis is right on his heels now. 10 laps completed. We've had those 2 red flags, but certainly some of the cars have got more laps under their belt than others. And now we've moved from to 77. A little bit of... Well, there you go. There's a face full of gravel, and that's from one of the quick crews. That's the Iron Lynx Lamborghini. That is so well placed. And let's have a little look at the 77. Michele Beretta, one of many Italian drivers here. Hout Racing Team Mercedes. That's based up just outside the Nürburgring circuit. And again, pushing on nicely at this stage in the reckoning, sharing with Yusuf Awega, fellow German racer, and Arjun Maini, the Indian racer. And that's running in the gold class. And he's placed 3rd in the gold class. And again, first 2 cars in that in the endurance series is the Santelot Racing Audi, Paul Everard, Gilles Magnussen, Jim Pla. Second place is the one we just looked at, Al-Zubair Baumann and Normally Grenier. But 3rd in the championship, second best of the Mercedes is this one. This lap is not an improvement for Michele Beretta. As John, you can see 4/10 of a second down in the first sector. Actually, this is one he really wants to be pushing on way down in the second sector. He's got clear track around him. That's a treat.
Yeah, but he's losing time. The second sector has been adjusted. It was 8/10. Now it's back down to 4/10.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, basically, this is not a lap that's going to see further progress for Michele Barretto in the Mercedes 77, the Mercedes AMG GT3, but that distinctive, as the AMG knows, and you go out and buy a Mercedes from your Mercedes dealer, you get an AMG model. That's a part of the package, that distinctive AMG nose with the 3-pointed star straight in the middle.
And how quick is it? Well, the quickest car of all is now an AMG Mercedes.
19 out and back, turn 6.
Cars having their moments. That was the one we just saw. It was the Grasser Racing. No, a different Lamborghini. That's the Grasser Racing one. That's shared by Matteo Jaena, Baptiste Moulin, and Artem Petrov this weekend. But just going to my point, we've got a Mercedes at the top of the charts now, because Fabian Schiller has gone 66 thousandths of a second quicker than Enrique Chavez. That's in the number 2 AMG Team Get Speed entry. He shares with Lucas Stoltz and Jules Gounon, one of the front runners here, surely.
We saw the 63 Lamborghini running wide on the exit of Lesmo to the team manager of car 63 to race director immediately. No hanging around, no quick expressos. Get there now.
Yeah, all team managers need to know the route to the race stewards, and no excuses will be brought. When they say immediately, they mean get up to talk to us now. Something we want to tell you about. But, right, not yet in the 1 minute 44s. We're almost on the nose of 1 minute 45.3 seconds. Fabian Schiller, top of the pile. Now we're looking at Max Hofer. John, this is a driver this weekend who is due to do double duty. Young Austrian, sharing just with Andrei Mukazov in the number 66 Trezo Temto Racing Audi. Max is another one of these GT3 drivers who competes all around the planet, but in a 3-hour race it meant that he will presumably do the first and third stints and teammate the middle one, but never guess, teams might want him to do parts 2 and 3.
He could do the second and third stints. It depends what the team decide. But not just just looking down, another driver who's in a manufacturer, but we've not seen him previously in this series anyway, is Ben Green, who's in the 36 Aston Martin, who previously was driving in the Ferrari, the Emile Frey Ferraris. Ben Green has gone second quickest in his 36 Aston Martin, 41 hundredths of a second behind Fabian Schiller. So again, as we're watching cars, just picking various randomly cars out, there's Max Hofer in the 66 Audi. There are times being recorded. Wow, where did that come from?
Yeah, exactly so. And we are dealing in, I did say we'd get down to dealing in tenths of a second, then hundredths of a second. Top 5 cars covered by a whisker over a tenth of a second. It's that tight, and it's only going to get tighter. My eye is what is the fastest lap going to be. This is a free practice session. It's a 2-hour session. We've had 2 red flags already. So it's a bit of stop-start, but we're out there and going.
Just looking down through the field, the 78 Barbell Motorsport Lamborghini. Sandy Mitchell has set fastest overall time, Sector 1, personal best Sector 2, currently in the pit lane, 6th quickest. 32 BMW, directly behind Sheldon van der Linde. That's the Dries van Thor Charles Verts car. So it's in
Car
7th position.
46
Jordan
out and
Pepper
back
in the
to 10.
163 Lamborghini has just been dropped because somebody's gone further. Arthur Rouget in the Audi 111 has now popped up, and Max Hesse likewise in the 998 BMW. So it's just literally the top 6 is almost rotating by the lap.
Yeah, it is. And good to report that Tom Gamble's McLaren number 159 has got out onto the circuit. So, and then it's probably going to do an out lap and then come back in. There's Lorenzo Ferrari,
Yeah.
and in the middle, Lorenzo Patrese looking at Leonardo Moncini out in the track. These are very young drivers. I mean, 19 is sort of about the average age of that team, but I like to see they're having fun as well. Very important.
But I noticed it might have been at Nürburgring, Lorenzo Ferrari and Lorenzo Patrese. There's a difference in the swagger between these two. They're both young drivers, but one's got that exterior swagger, and the other's a lot more sort of, you might say, self-effacing. And it's just an interesting contrast in the characters and personalities of two young drivers who've got a big, big future ahead of them.
They do, and I mean, it just goes to show that your competitive spirit comes from different sources, and great. I think it probably helps the team. I asked Lorenzo yesterday, do you learn more in an endurance round of Fanatec GT or a sprint? And he was very politically correct and said, well, I enjoy both, but I really wanted to find out, you're one of 3 drivers in this. You've got a full hour-long stint, and there are obviously many of those in the Spa 24 Hours on the longer rounds, but whereas in a sprint round, you have roughly half an hour twice during that meeting. But, you can be sure these young Italian drivers are learning as they go and doing a very, very good job indeed. So Moncini down in 35th position at the moment, so some way back. His best lap is 1.1 seconds down on the ultimate pace, but I'm sure now he's got clear track ahead of him, not tripping up over anyone, the pace might start to come his way. But again, working through a program.
26 under investigation for speeding in the pit lane.
Number 26 Audi is one from Sansalot Racing with Ivan Klimenko and a face you wouldn't expect to see in there, Ezekiel Perez-Companc this weekend. Mad Panda Motorsport not here. No bamboo shoots for them, so they're not here. But the one of our favourite drivers in the championship, Ezekiel Perez-Companc, always a smile on his face, but he has competed in Audis before.
Yes,
so,
he had a season with WRT back about 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So he's familiar with the Audi GT3. So, and Moncini looking again coming into the Ascari chicane, makes his way through, just runs the curve perfectly, and again the exit. Of people, you can see the Porsche just coming up behind. It's obviously just gone out, having been in the pits, so trying to get a little bit more tire temperature before it then sets off on a flying lap, as we see Moncini come through Parabolica. And what's the lap time going to be? Currently 36th overall. So is he going to see an improvement? Comes across the line now, and that sees him 2 places up to 34th.
It's exactly the same time as Robin Freins just managed in a BMW down to a thousandth of a second. But the ultimate pace is still Jake Dennis at the very top.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Jake Dennis time is been 88 hundredths of a second of being the first driver to break into a 1 minute 44 second lap. So again, that was set on lap 14. So the set of tires that Jake Dennis is on has not just literally gone out of the pits in a brand new set of tires. That's a pretty strong run from Jake Dennis in the 991 BMW.
Yeah, that's the one from Century Motorsport. It's red and black by and large, that car, but it's also impressive because his previous lap was 0.2 of a second. He improved by 0.2 of a second. He'd already just gone to the top by a tiny fraction over Fabian Schiller's number 2 Mercedes, but then almost did the same again, but did it marginally better. So 1 minute 45.087 seconds. Now we're looking at one of the cars that's a star in the bronze class, and it's AF Corsa leading that championship. Jeff Michiels and his father, Louis Michiels, share that with Andrea Bertolini, who has just been such a Ferrari strongman for decades now, has tested pretty much every Ferrari on the planet in terms of their competition machinery, and they've worked together, particularly Louis Michiels and Andrea, for years, and a lot of success in the bronze category across the years. But they're leading their category bronze in the Endurance Series by 4 points. And there is Andrea looking on, the weather eye. There's nothing will get by him.
He is very much the senior man, if you want a senior man within the whole Ferrari GT context of who's been there, written the book, done all the miles testing. And, I mean, a very, very capable partner to this Ferrari, this number 52 AF Corsa entry.
Yeah, it's going very well in class in this session. This is a session that counts for nothing apart from the teams getting a feel for their car. And if you're joining us and haven't been watching for a year or so, the circuit has been resurfaced and all the teams are finding it not just faster, but different. And they're trying to adapt to what they can do in the setup of their car to maximise their tyres, their contact with the
Warning
surface.
flag to car 30 for cutting the chicane 4 times.
Yeah, I've just seen that. I'm just looking down at our information screen. Car 30's number pops up on a regular basis. So at least there's consistency. You have to say, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it once, do it 4 times, and you will be noted.
Yeah, car number 30 is the OQ by Oman Racing, BMW, Jens Klingman, Ahmed Al-Hati and Sam Dehaan. And I think it was Sam at the wheel from the start of the session. He's down in 43rd position. Yes, it is Sam. So he has been noticed. The team managers will have noticed the warnings on the screen and they'll be putting a message through to him. But it may well be we've got an hour and a quarter or so remaining in this 2-hour practice session that his turn will be coming to a conclusion for now.
Yeah, where he's been cutting, I think it's not so much cutting, but maybe running wide. There's the 991 in. That's the car currently quickest overall. Jake Dennis, presently behind the wheel, is on the exit of the second chicane, the very anti-Rodja. So again, it's quite often the case you see a driver dropping a wheel or maybe trying to, and that's just what's going on here. You've got the 48 Mercedes tucked up behind. There's a group of 4 cars all running sort of 2 side by side, and it's all a little bit. So the Mercedes gets through relatively cleanly and will want to use the pace of the Aston Martin, both using more or less the same power units. So the 48 tucked right in behind the Aston Martin, which is currently in 38, Van Ulrit in yes, then 21.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of swapping around. Daniel Morad, they're getting a little bit frustrated. The Aston Martin didn't seem to realise it wasn't a race, appeared to be going one way. Maybe it was just circumstance, but Daniel Morad, Canadian racer, started his life in single-seaters and is now very much a go-to man in GT3 around the globe. But looking, well, it might as well practice what it's like to get a tow past the pits and then have a look up the inside, the classic move. But you'd think the door will be left suitably open and braking as late as he could there, John.
Yes, I mean, if you're braking where the Aston's braking, you can actually be slightly later because you've got that longer run into the entry into turn 1. But good job by Daniel Morad, and sort of in effect the Aston conceded probably before they got into the braking zone because the Mercedes had gotten itself alongside. So this is only free practice. There's no point in trying to set the world on fire and make yourself. Oh, now that was an aggressive block from Van Ulrit in the Aston Martin, and that will be probably observed if not noted, because late moves, late sort of snap one side or the other directly to block a car is kind of frowned upon. In my book, certainly it is.
Yeah, this is just a free practice session. So just to reiterate, if you're joining us now, Jake Dennis, fastest of all in the number 991 BMW, in this wonderful array of cars around this most fantastic circuit, are now getting into the real swing of things. We've got an hour and 12 minutes remaining in the session, and for a lot of the drivers, they're probably, if they were the first drivers out, they're probably coming towards the end of their allotted time in this 2-hour practice session. Be time for their teammates to take over. Handful of cars in the pit lane, but basically, as you can see from these shots, John, most of them out on the circuit together.
Yeah, a bit of driver changes going on. Lucas Stoltz taking over the number 2 Get Speed Mercedes, so he's behind that. Jordan Pepper behind the wheel of the 163 Lamborghini. Tim Creswick is in the number 36 Aston Martin, and Enrico Chavez, who was the pace setter, that car has dropped down to 5th.
Yep, and I mentioned that Tom Gamble in the 159 McLaren had gone out into the circuit. It's actually done 3 laps, but it's back in the pit, so whatever was being worked on is probably being reassessed, and hopefully it is something that's fully fixed, and that will go out. But the other 51 cars covered at the moment by 2.3 seconds from fastest to, which is still Jake Dennis in the 991 Century Motorsport BMW, to the number 11 Aston Martin. That's the gap between top to bottom, with one car, the 159 McLaren, still to set a time. However, as I said, the second driver in the rotation is being moved through and about to be inserted in a whole host of cars. Looking at the number 12 Come To You Racing Aston Martin, Nicholas Baer, Sebastian Ogard and Kobe Powell's this weekend. Yeah,
Lucas Stoltz in the number 2 Mercedes car, currently second quickest into the pit. So Lucas Stoltz has only just gotten into that car, so I would assume he may stay in for a little longer. As we see the Mustang come in just as the car At the head of the pit lane there is the 998. So that's a car. Dan Harper, I should say, not Ben. Dan Harper normally would be behind the wheel of that, but he's not here this weekend, I'm assuming. There it is, Dan Harper. He would be, well, he is in the car now.
Yeah,
because I looked down the entry list and he wasn't. Suddenly he is.
Oh, right.
Good to see that he is here, because he is a right little charger. Very, very impressive.
And it's
worth
watching them, because they're 4th in the championship at the moment, the outright championship for the endurance series. Top place BMW for Rover Racing. Of course, you get used to the traditional yellow, white and black livery that Rover Racing run, but with the Multibanks Group sponsorship, the 998 has its own very attractive gold, blue and white livery, and their season has been super, super strong. So can they do it in Monza? Well, it remains to be seen. However, you know they're always in the mix, and they won the opening round at Paul Ricard. A 6th place and 11th followed, and not the results they were looking for, but they've been competitive everywhere. Sometimes the results haven't gone their way, and I would think they'll be working their way to the top. And at the moment, Dan is 9th fastest. He's 0.3 of a second down on the ultimate pace.
Yeah, the time I think initially was set by Max Hesse. So Dan Harper's now taken over, and then we've got Augusto Farfus, the Brazilian driver, who of course has got so much years of experience and can give the younger BMW drivers a leg up in terms of what they may feel the car is doing or what they would like the car to do. So it's a very strong lineup, the 998 Rover Racing BMW.
Fastest time, 1 minute 45.087 seconds, still with Jake Dennis. And what we're starting to see, John, is the big guns are working their way to the front of the timesheets. Those 2 early red flags meant a lot of them hadn't got to show their hand, but now they've had a handful of laps. I think the most laps on the board is the 163 Lamborghini, the winners last time out at the Nürburgring. They've got 17 laps under their belt, but majority of cars have got a dozen laps and a few more. A couple of runners are still way down on mileage, including Aurelian Panis's number 10.
And the BMW exiting out of Lesmo too. I think it may have been the BMW just kicked a little bit of dust up on the gravel at the edge of the curbing. So that's the 991. No, it wasn't. It was a Porsche. Oh, well, looked really off. Oh, yeah, and then the 46 BMW came round, had to step sideways to get out of the way of the gravel shrapnel. So a lot of gravel got kicked up, and I thought it might have been the BMW. Not guilty, my lad.
Not at all.
And you're free to leave the court.
Yeah, Robert Renauer at the wheel of the Herbst Motorsport Porsche, black and white, and going for a rodeo ride. But the car that's still fastest is the one we're looking at now, Jake Dennis. Nice, smooth line, the BMW M4 GT3 coming through Parabolica, or as it's also, what's it called, the Curva Michele Alboreto in memory, but it was called Parabolica very early on, and another competitive lap going in, about a second down on his ultimate pace, but Jake Dennis is getting some good mileage in, and at the moment he seems to have worked a patch of the track that he's got to himself, which always helps when you're trying to get a feel for the car. So
watching it sweep through, and it just looks planted. I mean, these cars are essentially production-based GT cars, but they're now evolved into highly sophisticated, particularly on the aerodynamic side, but also on the mechanical side, what teams are doing with the shock absorber, the spring, the roll bar, that package, which has always been the big part of a GT car in their infancy. Now it's being dominated, dictated by the aerodynamics and the rear wing and the diffuser, which works in harmony with it. And the BMW in particular is a spectacular car. Oh, Jake, that wasn't in the script. Oh, did you see it?
No, I didn't. I was looking away there, John. But exit of turn 7 or the second Lesmo, a lot of drivers out and back there. We saw the Herbst Motorsport Porsche a lap or so ago. Also, the previous corner, the first Lesmo, the number 57 entry went wide off the circuit there. That's the Winwood Racing Mercedes, black and white livery there. Tanart Satyan Tiracle, Dan Arrow and Colin Carasani. They're very well placed in the silver class because they're leading it. So these little moments could make quite a difference, John. Get it even wider and you could bring out a red flag. You could cost yourself track time. So right now,
I'm looking, timing and scoring. At the minute, it looks as if we've got the top 35 cars covered by under a second. I thought it was meant to be competitive.
Yeah, no, but it'll tighten up towards the end, John. I mean, it's shocking, that level of spread. 35 cars, 1 second. No wonder we're going to be talking in the tiniest of increments. Brilliant high shot over the start-finish straight. Fastest driver on the track, fastest car on the track so far. Jake Dennis, a 991 Century Motorsport BMW M4 GT3. Brilliant high shot of the first chicane, John.
Yeah, from the drone looking down. And again, you get this sort of the angle, the revision that took place in the first chicane, the rettifiglio, to give it its correct title, and this long corner, which we, again, historically know as Curva Grande. So there is the number 2. Lucas Stolz was behind the wheel, but I assume it is still Lucas Stolz. So that's what timing and scoring is telling us.
Yep.
Yes, it is still Lucas Stolz.
His name flashing on the screen. Now, if anyone's just coming and looking at the screen, you go, hold on, we've got a bronze class car at the top. How can that be? But of course, bronze isn't all about bronze drivers. There will be one bronze driver in the mix, but in Jake Dennis, he's very much not a bronze driver, but he's in that mix. That's the permissible mix, and with his series success, he's a platinum ranked driver. You can go no higher.
Yeah, of course, when we get to qualifying, there'll be 3 qualifying segments. So Jake Dennis will do one, then his teammates will do the second and third. So whatever Jake Dennis does will respectfully be a bonus to the 2 bronze drivers. But it would be unlikely to see a bronze car overall over the 3 qualifying sessions secure pole position. But nothing, look, let's wait and see. You never know, you never know. Things can happen. There's nothing that's predictable in motorsport these days.
I'll tell you one thing that would be predictable. This car we're looking at now is an all-pro lineup. Lucas Stolz, Fabian Schiller, who did the early runs, and Jules Gounon, who will take it over. You have to feel an average across their 3 laps. We've got 19 cars in the pro class. It means it ought to be in the top 19. I reckon that Mercedes will be in the top 10, maybe the top 6. You never know. But Lucas Stolz, second fastest at the moment, 0.2 of a second down on the ultimate pace. Look out for that car. It stands out in its bright yellow livery from MAMG Team Get Speed, and it's always going to be part of the show.
Yes, I mean, the car, look at that wonderful shot coming through the Ascari. And the car looks really, really well hooked up at this moment. The times are fractionally down in Sector 1, a smaller fraction down in Sector 2. So don't anticipate an improvement in overall time. So let's wait and see what the final sector time delivers.
Car 51 out and back, turn 8.
So car 51 out and back in turn 8. And turn 8 is the entry into the Varianti, the Curva di Vialone.
And it's Alessandro Pierguidi who's just taken that over. We saw him standing in the back of the pit garage. He's now got on board, got out on the circuit. The car number 22, Schumacher CLRT. CL of the CLRT is Komi Ledegaard, former champion in the series. Ran a car's sort of Porsche championships in France, but stepping up to this and with a very, very strong crew. Dorian Boccolacci, I think, kicked them off this morning with Ayhancan Guven and Kevin Estra, guest driver this weekend. Wow. That's a super sub to bring on board.
Rev and Kevin, I mean, Mr. Porsche, and he is, for Porsche, the go-to guy to max out the performance of whether it's a GT3 car, whether it's a WEC car or whatever. He is Porsche's guy.
Certainly is. Ayhancan Guven has just improved into the top 30 and within a second of the ultimate pace. But you can be sure we'll see this.
Overruns. This is the entry into the chicane.
Is that one of the Ferraris? Let's take a look at the tail as it rejoins. It seems to be red and yellow and Ferrari-ish. No, hold on, it's an Audi. Let's wait till we're up close. So it could be one of the Trazer Attempto racing cars coming back onto the circuit. This will slightly interrupt Guven.
Out and back T10.
Okay, who's aboard number 51?
There he is,
Kevin
there's
Estra.
the man.
He's heard his name, he's smiling, looking at the screens. Ayhancan Guven doing a good job out there. Dorian Boccolacci with the dark curly hair standing in the background.
Yeah, just looking at Kevin Estra briefly. Had success last weekend in Japan, won overall. So an important victory there. He'll be looking for a major contribution to this car this weekend. Love Kevin Estra when you see him in a GT3 car, as we're going to see this weekend. And remember at Spa, some of the images of him in Spa, just all in sparring.
No, 100%. That's all he knows how to give. Right, Ayhancan Guven braking as late as he can. Neat, tidy. Looking at his sector times, ought to improve this lap. So I think he hasn't had much time in the car. Took over from Dorian Boccolacci, down in 34th. 0.9 of a second down, but surely going to go up the charts.
Now the 26 Audi, Ezequiel Perez compact behind the wheel. That car is moved up to 11th overall. Now, well, that was Ezequiel himself who claimed that time, but it is the lead silver car by a substantial margin.
Yeah, the next one down is in 29th position. So if that was in qualifying, he could put 18 people between him and his nearest class rival. That would be a real helping hand. But the race is 3 hours. Again, Dorian Boccolacci and Kevin Estre looking on the Schumacher CLRT garage. And waiting to see how high up the order their car will go. And it is on the move, just suddenly looking for it on the charts. It's moved. We've got to find it now, anyhow. 99 Audi, that's the car that always stands out. It's a little bit further down, 99 car. It's, again, Trezor Attempto Racing, Christopher Haas, Alex Arca, the car second in the championship, of course it is, and Ricardo Feller. But we did see that off in the gravel very early on. It's outside the top 40, down in 42nd position. Alex Arca has just taken it over, so he's the second driver in that car. And the time they lost while the car was recovered won't have hampered them too much because everyone else had to stop.
Yeah. And directly ahead is the Dries van Voor number 32 WRT Audi. So that car slightly out of position, presently in 13th. Now, look, the times, sort of maybe about 10-15 minutes ago, were changing quite rapidly. They've stabilised a little bit more. But Dries van Voor will be not happy to be what is the 4th quickest BMW at present.
At present, but he does know the car was going well yesterday, so that's in his mind. The track will be evolving because there was a fair bit of practice for the various championships here at Monza this weekend, but you still suspect there was a little spit of rain overnight. Certainly some of the grassy sections on the outside of the circuit here looked a little bit chewed up, a little bit of mud after early vehicles. But right now the track temperature it's hot. Well, it's risen. It was 19.5 degrees at the start of play this morning. It's now getting towards 24 degrees. Air temperature actually is absolutely stable. It was about 16.5 degrees. It got to 18. It's sitting on 18, so more comfortable for the drivers in the cockpits than some of the places they may race around the planet.
The thing that's sort of that the humidity is 79%. It's, it's quite a high level of humidity. So while that makes it slightly uncomfortable possibly for the drivers, but it's good for aerodynamics because that heavier air gives a little bit more aerodynamic gain. So Louis Pret in the Garage 59, that car is the lead McLaren. It's the Garage 59 entry right now. Louis Pret behind the wheel in 7th position.
In 7th place, very, very good indeed. 0.3 of a second, just under 0.3 of a second down. So the next car behind him is he's just behind Valentino Rossi, and he's on identical time, 1 minute 45.390 second. But for the second generation Pret racer, his father races, will be racing in the GT2 here. He's going very, very well for McLaren.
Just the shot of the McLaren coming past the start-finish line. We were walking across the track yesterday from our commentary position, and one of the things about Monza that really makes it special is you watch cars come past the start-finish line travelling at high speed, and you sort of glibly talk, well, it's doing 160 or 170 miles an hour. When you actually see it within about 20 metres, you realise how fast that is.
Plus the sound. There is something about being present at a race circuit. You can pick up noise on the cameras, but when you can pick out each of the manufacturers from its engine note, it really is something. What we're seeing with the GT3 cars just visually is just how well planted they are. They've got obviously much more aerodynamic addenda than you'd have on the junior cars in GT4, but it's aggressive and it really does get them planted.
Well, again, we've got GT3, we've got GT2 here this weekend. Bruce, you're going to be involved in that broadcast. GT2 cars were lapping up to 0.3 of a second. Sorry,
3 seconds.
3 seconds quicker. And some of the GT2 cars' best laps were beginning to kiss the lap times of these GT3 cars. The GT2s have got less aero but more power. But here on a circuit like Monza, which is more a power bias circuit than an aero circuit, it sort of doesn't mitigate them quite so much.
21 out and back turn 7.
It's a busy old session for cars going off the track.
Yeah.
And that's the Country Racing Aston Martin. I just want to point out that 2 messages in a row, turn 8 and turn 10, both the same driver off the circuit, Alessandro Pierguidi, and we saw him. We saw that car off at the first chicane as well. So really pushing to the very, very limits and just that little bit beyond. But anyhow, it doesn't matter so much in this unless they think you're putting other drivers in a position of danger. Let's take a look at. This is a new entry this weekend, the Italian team, BMW Italia Ceccato Racing, running in the bronze class. Felice Gelmini sweeping around the outside. He'll know this circuit well, won't know all the drivers in the championship well. Normally competes with this team in the Italian GT series. And like our series, they have a sprint series and endurance series, but for Gelmini, just a chance to play on a sort of loftier stage, if you want.
Yeah, you're stepping into the best GT3 category in the world with the best GT3 drivers in the world. So it's a step forward and a lot can be gained, a lot can be learned. But of course, the National Championship is a very competitive one, and they're running the contemporary BMW M4 GT that we're just seeing coming through picture. So they've got the equipment, but the National Championship doesn't necessarily have is that the ultimate level of competition that we see here today.
No, and as I said before, up in this championship here, he's got the creme de la creme of GT3 racers. A lot of them race all around the world, but just at a high level. But how do you learn in sport? You compete against people who are necessarily a little bit better. You learn from them. But right now, Felice Delmini sharing with Philippe Deans, an American racer who's largely been racing in Europe. Good to have a new championship team this weekend, and also Marco Cassara, who's the older driver in the mix. He's a 45-year-old Italian racer and will be loving racing on stage. He was very enthusiastic in a press conference yesterday about racing against all the young guns. But right now for that BMW crew, 26, so they're pretty much mid-grid.
Yeah, we're just over halfway through this 2-hour session. Baptiste Moulon behind the wheel of the Lamborghini. And now what we're beginning to see is a kind of stabilization across the entire 52-car field. Tom Gamble has managed to get out and get a recorded lap time. He's still the slowest of the field, but he's missed out so much. He's only had 5 laps in total. But everybody who would have gone out at the start would have most likely started on a brand new set of tyres. Pirelli slicks. Those tyres have now, in some cases, done over an hour's running. And they would be now at a level where they've plateaued. So unless somebody's prepared to throw a brand new set or a set of tyres that's little or less used, one driver who has improved is Eduardo Matara in the Lamborghini number 63. He is up to 14th position. I think that's just one that just popped up a minute ago.
Right, this is Baptiste Moulin. Grasser Racing Team, of course, won the previous round. That was at the Nürburgring, but that was the 163 that was shared by Jordan Pepper, Franck Pereira, to such success, sharing it with, of course, Marco Mappelli, long-time Lamborghini racer. This is the sister car running in the silver class, down 31st position for Belgian racer Baptiste Moulin at the moment, and he's sharing that number 19 with the Guatemalan-Italian driver Matteo Larena and Artem Petrov, who is stepping up to join them this weekend. And again, Grasser Racing Team has run Lamborghinis for a good decade now, hasn't it? And it's interesting to see their form sort of fell away a little bit, and then this year, absolutely with that 163 crew, right back at the sharp end of the championship.
Yeah, it's a very, very, how would you say, well-celebrated success at Nürburgring. And I think a popular success in the pits, to be fair.
It was, and seeing Gottfried Grasser, the team owner, his face afterwards, it was like, you know, sort of, we're back at the very front. And of course, we have to emphasize in this championship, in Fanatec GT, every year, the standard goes up. There's more and more manufacturer sort of involvement, and they want their if you're running Lamborghini, you want your Lamborghini Huracans at the very front of the field. Likewise, the Aston Martins, the BMWs, the Fords, etc., and of course Ferrari too. But what we're not seeing as yet, John, is Porsche at the front end, because the highest Porsche today is that number 22 car driven by Hanchen Guven thus far. But that's down in, where are we looking? We're talking 16th position, 0.4 of a second down on the pace.
Patience, dear boy.
Patience is good.
They've got qualifying tomorrow morning around the same time. And in fact, qualifying will be finished by this time tomorrow morning. So I think we can expect to see, certainly in the pro cars, very quick times, quicker than we have currently seen. So still the fastest lap is credited to Jake Dennis in the 991 BMW. Darren Lung is now behind the wheel of that car, and that's a 1:45.087.
Alessandro Pierguidi, plenty of emphasis with his gesticulation there. The number 51A, of course, the Francorchamps Motor Ferrari, now in the hands of Vincent Abril. Tom Gamble has finally got going, and the 159 is setting quick times now. But let's go down and hear from the driver who's just got out of the 991 BMW, Jake Dennis, fastest, he's with Gemma.
Jake, looking good out there for the first part of the session, of course. Yeah. Fastest time. How's the car feeling?
Yeah, I mean, we can't complain. I think overall we've had a pretty good session so far. You know, old tyre, new tyre all seem quite strong. So, yeah, from our side, feeling positive. Obviously good to be back. You know, it's obviously a little bit different to what I normally drive nowadays, but yeah, nice to know that I haven't forgot how to drive these cars. It's been a while, so yeah, excited to be here for Monza. The new surface is super high grip, so the car's feeling really good.
It's tricky out there. There's a lot of traffic.
Yeah, it's something which I don't miss. That's obviously like 55, 60 cars on track in only 5 kilometers. It's tight to get a lap in, but here it's probably not too bad because you generally need a tow anyway to do a good lap, and it's quite hard to not get one of them. So yeah, overall positive feelings.
Do you think this is reflective of what we're going to see throughout the weekend with BMWs topping the timing?
I hope so. You know, obviously for me, the overall win is obviously not going to be possible, but I think for the guys who are fighting for the championship with the BMW guys, hopefully they got a shot. But yeah, I mean, I want to try and get my class win with Darren and Toby. But it's just nice to have some good pace, you know, good BOP, and yeah, hopefully we can overall have a good weekend.
Enjoy the weekend. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
So that was Jake Dennis. He's always talked solid sense, doesn't he?
He's been, I think, a driver who he deserved more. I mean, he won the Formula E World Championship a season a bit ago, but he was one of a number of young drivers who were all in and around, and some drivers move forward, some don't, largely in part because they've got the financial backing to do so. But Jake has carved out a fantastic career for himself, and great to have him here at Monza. And again, just illustrating just how good a driver he is, whether it's in a single-seater or whether it's in a GT3 car.
Now, remember when we had the first red flag, the car that was fastest at that time was the number 34 Aston Martin for Walkenhorst Motorsport. Second driver on board is the driver we look at now, Valentin Hasclo. He took over from Miguel Ramos. Car with that time from early on, still good for 5th place. That's just how good that initial lap was. But for Valentin, brought on this weekend in place of Ross Gunn. He's a French driver who races basically all around the world in Aston Martins, and a very, very safe pair of hands. And he'll just be getting the feel. We heard from Jake Dennis there about the different texture, the different feel from the circuit, the ultimate amount of grip.
Well, there's a car getting a little bit of attention, the bodywork removed, and diving into, it's mechanical suspension. Looks as if there's something going on. And that's one of the Rotronic Porsche.
Yeah, well, that's the one that's really well placed generally in championships.
That's a Harbath Motorsport, I beg your pardon. Now, that doesn't look like the front suspension of any Porsche I've ever had, but basically it's a GT3 car with a full wishbone suspension front and rear. No torsion bars in the good old days of the 911. So Julian Andlauer would have been behind the wheel of that car.
Yeah, been showing with Patrick Niederhauser and Sven Muller. Patrick was definitely out early on. So is this because someone has run a little bit wide and they want to get everything out? But certainly gravel is not the driver's friends. But it doesn't look as though there's enormous panic, apart from in that that mechanic's eyes in the background. He's trying to get his message across in a noisy pit garage. Right, 6th fastest at the moment. This is a car that a lot of people are drawn to because of the driver on board at the moment, Valentino Rossi, the number 46 BMW from Team WRT, fastest in yesterday's sessions and going very nicely. Just over a quarter now. Where are we? We're 0.3 of a second down on the ultimate pace on Valentino Rossi. Oh, face full of dirt on the exit of the second Lesmo. And again, you can see if anyone runs wide, they lose so much momentum when they're desperately trying to carry it onto this long, slightly kinked run down under the bridge and then up the little rise into the Ascari chicane, and Valentino very much closing on the Ferrari in front of him.
Yeah, no, he didn't really want that because the exit of Lesmo 2 would have been rather dusty, so he's got a little bit of a slipstream, whether he'll be able to make use of it coming down to the entry into Parabolica.
73 out in back turn 7.
And we're just hearing, good news, we've got report from, moving around in front, Rotronic Racing. We're looking at their Porsche. They're just changing bits and bobs. They have no panic. There is nothing particular. They're working through a sequence there, John.
Yes, I mean, that's part of what you do in these sessions. You make alterations to see whether they will improve the car. I mean, track conditions have changed since these cars went on track shortly after 9 a.m. this morning. So there's, well, I mean, they've got the bodywork back on. That's just around the back of the car, I beg your pardon. So they're doing something with the, to me, it's a shock absorber adjustment, or whether it's a ride height in conjunction, I don't know. But they're saying, look, we're just going through a sequence of alterations which we pre-planned, and there's nothing wrong. No, just yeah, that's what we're doing, chaps. Look, there's the car. We just put the bodywork back on. It's like a brand new car.
Yeah, and it's in the top 40. It's in 39th position, but that's a Porsche. The best news for Porsche fans like you, John, is Ayhan Şengüven's car, the number 22, is up into 9th position now. Remember, it was 16th, so it's working its way forward. Aston Martins have been going well, and Walkenhorst Motorsport got a cluster of them here at Monza. Looking at Maxime Robin, and in fact, the top Aston Martin is car number 36 in 4th place. Ahead of Valentin has close car, but it's the one we're looking at now. It's a bit further down the charts, and it's in 35th position, and still listed as Romain Leroux on board there, but again running in the various classes. That's running in the silver class. And Romain Leroux, at the moment, he's 8/10, 9/10 of a second down on the ultimate pace, so a little bit here or there, and he'll certainly vault up the order, but he's really just considering it from his own class point of view.
Correction to my last message, it is 777 and not 73 that went out in turn 7.
So a little correction from race control. That was the 777. That was the Almar Racing by Get Speed Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo. And we don't know, that's the car Brock Feeney's in. Brock Feeney, the Australian driver we were mentioning.
Yeah.
But I don't think Brock was the driver behind the wheel at the time.
No, it's Dominic Baumann at the moment. One has to presume that he's partway through his sequence.
21 out and back T7, 21.
That's Come To You Racing. That's Charles Clark, Mathis Lamont, and Job van Utrecht.
Yep, so turn 7, if you're just wondering, when we hear the messages from race control, is the exit of the second Lesmo, and that's a corner we've seen a whole gaggle of cars. Ever has been thus, but with that enormous gravel trap, we did have a red flag, the second red flag caused by the Lion Speed GP Porsche sitting in the gravel. That was removed. Oh, was there? No, I'll tell you what, that was the first of the red flags. The second one was when we had Christopher Haase sitting off at the Ascari chicane. But since then, we've been getting the mileage in, looking at Dynamic GT, and that's a team that came here in Monza in the rain a handful of years ago now and took victory. And Porsche have a big success. And John, that wasn't quite the approach to the corner that young Theo Nue would have wanted.
No, just that last-minute sort of snap. I don't know whether that was maybe too much rear brake bias that caused that, but certainly would have caught Nue slightly unawares, but he gathered it all up and got into Parabolica and is on his way. So that car currently well down the list. It's actually the slowest right now of everybody, so that's a disappointment for the 55. Another car that's not performing, and I thought would be a real standout star, is the 64, the Ford Mustang. It's down in 51st position, so Dennis Olsen behind the wheel, and on the circuit, which is all about straight line speed and power. Remember when the car debuted at Paul Ricard earlier this season, it was an absolute horse all the way down the Mistral Straight, but it's not performing here. Now, again, this is a session, it's not qualifying, it's not the race, but I would have expected the Ford to be further up, even though they might be going through a process of working their way through changes on the car.
Yeah, but with a driver lineup of Christopher Mies, Fred Vervies and Dennis Olsen, you know that they will all be delivering. And I think if anybody can work it, you know, that they can rely on all those drivers in such a rock-solid pro crew. One of 19 pro-class cars. And don't forget, let's give you the mix, actually. The breakdown is we've got 6 cars in the gold class, 8 in silver, but 19 in the top class, 19 in the pro class. That comes up to 52 cars. It's a very busy circuit at Monza. Now Theo Nue is actually preparing to take great chunks out of the list. He's 52nd out of 52 runners, but with only the final corner, the long right-hander at Parabolica. This is the corner where he had a little twitch on entry last time around. This time far better, and therefore he's set up in that Porsche the whole way through the sweep, very gently banked, if anything, onto the start finish straight, past the grandstands, the old control tower. This circuit 102 years old, and it still absolutely works today. How far up the order will he move? Waiting to see the time come on the board.
He stayed 52nd, but his last sector time was really slow in relation to the first two. So he was green first and second sector, but 1.9 seconds down in that final sector. So again, where did that time vanish?
Well, maybe it made a mistake coming out of the Ascari chicane and then lost the momentum down to Parabolica. Ours is not the reason why. Ours is to look. So we got 991 BMW at the top of the crew. Lamborghinis, the best of Lamborghinis, is third fastest. It's the 163. It's Marco Lapelli. But this is the Iron Linked car we're looking now with Leonardo Pulcini, who's come on board this weekend.
And also just looking down at the 333 Ferrari, which is...
Oh, yeah, that's a big jump up the order.
No, it's up to 6th position.
Yeah,
so that's come really unexpectedly.
Yeah, well, that's been a huge leap. Felipe Fernandez-Laza, generally a driver, you sort of say, Fernandez-Laza, you think he's at the Nürburgring. He's been a long-distance racer there for years, and with Rinaldi racing for years. So sharing with Christian Hook and David Perel. That's in the bronze class, but he's giving them reason to smile.
No, I mean, I hate to be speculative, and I'm only second guessing, but when you get a big spike in a performance between one car's where they've been and where they end up now, you'd imagine that's going to be tyre related. If it's not, that's impressive. Now there is the car I'm hoping to see out, and Dennis Olsen still behind with the Ford Mustang. I mean, unmistakable. Cool shades. Oh, I like those. Yeah.
I think those are his.
But he wears those are spectacles.
Exactly, they're spectacles.
Yes.
I wonder if they're Serengeti, you know, where they change in the light. That's something from the 1980s. But again, you could just see the single pit garage. It feels quite constricted there. Some of the others have double pit garages for the multi-car teams. Dan Arrow racing for Winwood Racing, car number 57. We had a look at this early in the day, running in the silver class, and in fact very well placed in the silver class. Let's just refresh my memory. So well placed that he's actually leading it, 20-point margin, so a healthy margin. Dutch racer Dan Arrow, compatriot Colin Corisani, and the driver with the longest surname in the race, Tanart Satyanthirakul, the Thai racer, at the top of the silver class with a 20-point lead. Maximum points this weekend for them would be 26 if they get class pole and class victory. And the next car in line is the Boots and VDS Mercedes, Cesar Caso, Roy Meujas and Aurelien Panis. So for Winwood Racing in the silver class, it's theirs to control, I'd say.
Yeah, and he's just come into the pit lane. He followed the
Car 21 out in back turn 6.
So looking at the Rover Racing BMW, just I think it's about to come off. Robin Friens. Now there's a name we used to be familiar with, then went off and got involved in single-seater racing and back now in GT racing, but not in an Audi where we knew him naturally made his name and reputation, but in a BMW for Rover Racing. So that's going to be an interesting partnership to see how he gets on in a mid-front engine GT car, which I believe is probably not, he hasn't driven many mid-front engine GT cars.
No, but you look at his record across the years, about the last decade, he's capable in absolutely anything. We said hello as he walked into the paddock yesterday. And again, you've got 52 cars. That's an awful lot of drivers. One of them is still down as having just a two-driver entry. But for everybody else, we can do the maths on that. We're talking about effectively 150 odd drivers. The only car that's not got a three-car crew is the one that even Semenko is sharing, Santalot Racing Audi with Ezekiel Perez Compact. Everyone else has got the full complement.
Ben Tuck behind the wheel of the Ferrari, currently 29th. Can we see any improvement for the British driver? Stays 29th on a 146.004. I'm just looking to see where we are. Well, I think we've now got the top 40 cars covered by just under a second, and that, ironically, is the 96 Rotronic Porsche, the car we were looking at in the garage. Nothing wrong with it at all. No, at 40th is where we expect it to be.
Well, you got to believe him if you feel like it. And having just looked at that 72 Kessel Racing Ferrari, sorry, 74, Ashish Patel brought over from the States this weekend to join in. Alex Fontana, old friend of the championship, running as well.
The Ferrari entering the number 9. Ferrari entered, and it just gave a little sort of, that's not the number 9 Ferrari, that is the Ferrari, but just a little snap oversteer again on the entry into Parabolica. So it's wandering around, it's under braking. It doesn't look quite as a Kessel Racing entry.
Yeah, it's the other Kessel Racing from looking at one of their cars, which is the one we were talking about, the blue one with Nicolo Rossi at the wheel. He's sharing with David Fuminelli and Nicolo Schiro, one of the all-Italian crews. But yeah, it looked a little bit unsettled just then.
Yeah, just on the braking down into the first chicane, some cars look really, really planted. That looked slightly sort of twitchy and nervy, as if either maybe there's a little bit too much aero in the front, or I don't know what else it could be. But let's keep an eye on it and see if that was just maybe a one-off incident, or whether the car is, wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, the history of Monza, 102 years, but ever since it started, it's been about trying to get, the maximum speed out of corners to carry down the long straights, and ever is us. This time, of course, they've got more grip than they had before, but they've got to sort of really get the feel through the seats of their pants, and how much more grip. It's very hard to quantify until you get out there, John.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the entire circuit has been resurfaced, but a large proportion of it has, particularly on the parts where there's been changes to the chicanes, which is pretty much first chicane, second chicane, and then the Ascari. And Jake Dennis mentioned it during that interview with Gemma Scott, that he is feeling the extra grip from that new surface, above and beyond when he was previously last here.
Right, we've been talking about Roy Mejuas, second in the silver class, sharing with Cesar Gazo and Aurelian Panis. There it is, the number 10 Boots and VDS Mercedes, down in 44th position. So it'll be a whisker over a second down, as you pointed out, John. The top 40 cars within a second of still that not pole time, the fastest time from the 991 Century Motorsport BMW. And again, drivers pushing out as far towards the exit of the corners as they possibly can. This will not be an improvement from Roy Mejuas. Out to the edge of the circuit, and again, nose of the Mercedes dipping down, a little bit of braking and continuing on his way, and just behind. It doesn't seem to matter which car you look at. The car behind almost always seems to be running wide on the exit.
One of the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghinis, but it managed to get through it and didn't actually kick up too much gravel onto the track for those that were following. So, of course, Barwell not running in an overall Wayne situations, but they were looking to pick up their class successes, which they've successfully done time and time again.
Just noticing a little message on screen saying car 51 spun into the gravel at turn 7. Did it keep going again? Because that was about just over a minute ago, so just before the shot we were looking at of the Lamborghini running wide, and that would be Vance on Abril, and now the number 66 Audi going for a loop.
Yeah, that's the second chicane.
What is that?
Yellow flag, turn 5.
Okay, turn
Car
5.
66 spun.
So that's on screen what we see and confirmed. So Mokazov in the Tempto in the bronze category, so he's reversing. There is actually, you can see there is if you miss the entry to the chicane, there is a path you're meant to follow, but because of where the car is, so that is the exit of the path you're meant to follow to rejoin the track. It looks like that left rear tyre was fractionally down.
Well, let's hear what's happening in the number 2 Mercedes with a bit of team radio. Lucas Stoltz, Fabian Schiller and Jules Gounod.
It's really the right-hand corner, so always the left side, that's an issue. Left rear mainly, and then we struggle for the understeer because you can't come in with the rear axle.
Okay, well, that's Jules Gounod, who's literally done a couple of laps. He's come back in to report. But again, we were talking about the makeup of the crew there. Lucas Stoltz went out, Fabian Schiller went out, Lucas Stoltz went out. Both fast. The car's sitting second in the chart, which is suitable for car number 2. But Jules Gounod, again, being cerebral, just trying to talk about where he finds the performance, the balance, the handling.
I think what maybe has happened, the car's done what number of laps? It's done in total 27. And that's obviously, I suspect, on one set of tyres. So here's the the white flag being waved for this Ferrari, the 52. That's the Louis Macleod's car coming slowly.
So he got a puncture.
Seems to be sitting down. The left rear does look a lot softer than, it's not completely flat, but it may be deflating. So they will have notification in the cockpit to say the tyre is going down. So maybe that's the reason the car is going slowly. Paul Everard and the Santa Lock Racing currently in 23rd position.
Yeah,
that's running in the gold category, second overall in that category.
Yeah, they've. But in the endurance category, they're still topping that by 9 points ahead of the Almanar Racing Mercedes. Paul Everard, who's on board, Gilles Magnus, and Jim Pla. So it's been a good, solid season.
Yeah, good car. So behind is one of the Retronic Porsches. I don't know if that's the 96 or not. We had a look at it when it was in the garage. Weren't quite sure whether that was a problem or just simply the team are working through changes. Julian Andlar behind the wheel.
Yeah, just to touch back on the number 25 Audi, Paul Everard driving there. 2 class wins in the categories out of 3 rounds this year. No wonder they're leading the championship for gold drivers in the endurance elements of Fanatec GT Europe. But right now, it's green. We've had yet another car running off. This time it's the treble 1 Audi that went very, very well early on. It's in the hands of Hugo Cook. Now just outside the top 10, 11th position. And again, but all they need to find is 0.3 of a second. They'd be right at the sharp end of the mix. So it's ultra, ultra competitive here at Monza. This is a 2-hour free practice session. We've had spills, we've had drivers dipping their wheels over, but by and large, I think a lot of drivers now, we're getting a lot of free running, are starting to find how their cars are handling. Good to see the 96 Julian Andlauer car, as you pointed out, John, after it's worked through various parts in the pits, possibly being changed, inspected, back out onto the circuit. But they'd expect to find themselves a little closer to the front than they are right now.
Well, picking up a little bit of the gap between the Audi and the Porsche, and it'll be on the exit of this corner coming Lesmo 2 that Andlauer will try to get the drive off the corner and therefore use whatever aerodynamic gains the Porsche will benefit from. Whether he will try and make a move up into the Ascari chicane, he's sort of putting himself in position to get alongside, and he's done so. In fact, I think Everard and the Audi backed off and let the Porsche go through. Rather than, if that had been a race situation, it wouldn't have been such a generous, easy overtake for Andlauer, as we've just seen.
No, absolutely not. But right, target time. We thought we'd get people into the high 1 minute 44, so we're still at 1 minute 45.087. That was Jake Dennis. We heard from him in the 991 Century Motorsport BMW. A few teams, just because those first couple of red flags just didn't get in the going in the early part of the session with the first driver they sent out. But the day is brightening up here at Monza. The Rootronic Porsche coming back in. It's again, works about the order a little bit, but not yet in the top 20, half a second down.
Just looking down the timing and scoring, there's a couple of, certainly one that stands out to me, totally out of place, and that's the 99 attempt to Audi, down in 47th position. Now, Alex Acker is currently behind the wheel, but that's a car we saw
out and back on 8.
Red flags with Christopher Haase. So, looking at Michael Verhagen here coming through in the Lion Speed Porsche, that was a car also that going through Lesmo 2.
Yeah, that caused the first red flag, and the 99 Audi caused the second one. But I am
right.
surprised that with the combined talents of the racing crew of the Tracer attempt to 99, bear in mind they're second in the Endurance Championship. Alex Arca, who's at the wheel, Ricardo Feller, Christopher Haase, who had that first spin. I'm surprised it hasn't risen up. But, Tracer attempt to have been in this championship a long time, and you can be sure they're probably just cool, calm, collected. You don't just get to the front end of this championship without having the pace there, but they haven't found it yet today.
Michael Verhagen following the 48 Mercedes, Lucas Auer behind the wheel. I suspect Lucas Auer has just taken over the wheel of the 48. That car is presently 9th quickest, and I think there's a lot more pace to come, but here we are focusing on the Lion Speed Porsche. Michael Verhagen behind the wheel. So in 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th gear, there we go, and then he'll get into 6th gear just now. Well, now, yeah, got it right second time. Just behind the Ford Mustang. That cuts a big hole in the air because it is a physically large car. So the Porsche will be hoping to pick up something from the Mustang. Didn't quite manage to get it done going into the first chicane. And Verhagen just drops a wheel a little bit over the exit curb, coming out of the first chicane likewise, and just accelerates flat out all the way around. And it's just easy peasy coming through Curva Grande in these cars. The level of aerodynamic downforce is unbelievable.
So the slowest car thus far, Dennis Olsen bouncing the Mustang over the curbing. Very spectacular indeed. But Lucas Auer in that bright, the Mamba, the yellow and green livery, sort of snakeskin BMW, Mercedes behind, just wants to get past. And I think now Dennis will let him have the inside corner into Lesmo, but then that will compromise his line on the exit. And the Ford, in fact, having backed off a little bit now, has lost a bit more momentum and is going to be overtaken. I think that's the car that's fastest. The 991 Century Motorsport BMW works its way past. But for Dennis Olsen, it's about just having a number of laps. That's his out lap from the pits.
It doesn't look... It's over the curbing, certainly going through the second chicane and then through the Lesmos. Certainly, it didn't have the pace of the Mercedes in terms of overall group between Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2. So I would say at the minute the Mustang is not delivering the handling performance that we've hoped for. The car currently is 52nd of the 52 car field.
Well, it's busy on the track. We're about to go down to the pits because Gemma Scott has, we've been talking Mustang. Gemma has got Fred Vervisch.
Fred, we've seen you in and out of the pits a couple of times. What's happening? You had an engine problem after Thursday, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So after half a lap, unfortunately we had an engine failure. So we missed the whole session. It's a very valuable session because everybody participates and it dictates a bit how your weekend will go. But here we are again. We're driving, so that's very good. The guys, the boys and girls did a great job to fix the car. So far we have no problems. So that's very good.
Nothing specific that you're struggling with, just testing setup, is it?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we don't want to be where we are now at the moment, but yeah, we're going through some different setup changes, and we have to go very quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But I think, I mean, we need to stay positive, and yeah, we will not stay where we are now. That's for sure.
That's what we like to hear. Have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think Fred's being very careful in how he's describing where they are. The car, to me, I would say I've described it as looking lively, particularly when they ride the curbs. So this is the view with Dennis Olsen behind the wheel. And this is not typical of what we have seen previously from the Mustang. So the time lost yesterday is time that they can't really claim back. So they're trying to sort of shortcut their way through. And instead of doing things in a sort of what you might describe as a progressive way, they may be having to make changes which are more sort of off the cuff.
But okay, but other cars in the pits. But yeah, just touching back, looking at the Mercedes that's been going so well, the number 2 Mercedes, Jules Gounon back in the garage. But looking at Fred Verviers, listen to his words is one thing, cautious, trying to be positive. Look at his body language as the shoulders was down. But for the Mustang crew from Pro Zone competition, that's the only Ford Mustang here. They haven't got a sister car, so maybe they've gone too stiff on their setup. Certainly the way it's vaulting over the curbs, a little bit like a sort of kangaroo at the moment, is something they've got to sort out, because if you're that stiff, coming into Lad is going to be really uncomfortable and just can't get the power down. But with a pro crew like that, Fred Verviers, Dennis Olsen and Christian Mies, you know, they will have such valuable input, and let's hope for them that we can get them up, because we want as many manufacturers as we can at the sharp end. At the moment it's BMW, from Mercedes, from Lamborghini, Aston Martin. In fact, 3 Aston Martins in the top 6, so they've certainly got the Evo version of the Vantage to work very well indeed.
Fran Rueda in the 27, Garage 59, McLaren, that car overall 21st. So, again, we're seeing now from virtually the entire field, each sector time is down on their previous best, as we're what, 23, just over 23 minutes of this 2-hour session left. So, unless, again, if somebody wants to put a fresh or a new set, which I would be very surprised if anybody would bother doing that. We're now at a part of the day which is coming up to 20 to 11. Here at Monza. There's no qualifying at this time of the day, and the race doesn't begin until 3:30 on Sunday afternoon. So what information you get is probably not going to have a lot of benefit for qualifying on Sunday morning.
No.
Or arguably for the 3-hour endurance event on Sunday afternoon.
No, valid points. The only people who improved on the last lap are drivers almost a second down on the pace. Actually, Lorenzo Patrese has just moved up to 26, so he's now half a second down on the ultimate pace, but the other ones are all from 40th place down.
Actually, one improvement has come from the number 7, or 007 Aston Martin, as Marcus Sorensen behind the wheel. That car was out of position. It's now up to 5th position, behind Ben Green in the 36 Aston Martin. We talked about Ben jumping from Ferrari into an Aston Martin, and whether it was Ben set that time or whether that time was set by one of the 2 other co-drivers, but certainly Aston Martin's 3 of them in the top 10, 4th, 5th and 6th. David Pittard behind the wheel of the 34, and it's just getting, Aston Martin seem to be really gelling with Monza.
Yeah, really do. I mean, the Evo was a new version for this year, and I think a lot of teams will be looking at that for next year, because not all the manufacturers introduce their latest GT3 model in the same year. So you do get this ebb and flow, keeps things interesting. What I will say at the moment, we've only got 1 Ferrari in the top 10, and it's not one of the AF Corsa cars. We're looking at the number 71 car, David Vidales, the Spanish driver at the wheel. That ought to be in the top 10, but that is way down at the moment in
30th.
Gosh, it's the 6th fastest Ferrari.
Yep.
That is unusual for the count. The bragging rights at the moment is Rinaldi Racing, the treble 3 entry, and that's the car Christian Hook's at the wheel. It was the one that actually the time was set in the treble 3 by Felipe Fernandez Laza a while ago. That's the only one in the top 10 in 7th. It's gapped. The lead is 0.3 of a second, just under.
But what we have is a further 1-hour session later this afternoon, or early afternoon, in which we'll get maybe a more true view of where everybody is relative to the competition.
I think you're quite right, but let's go down and find the latest from the pits, because Gemma Scott's down with Vincent Abril. He's the driver of the 51 Ferrari. He's had quite a session.
Vincent, you've just come in. Obviously, Ferrari, Monza, it's the wonderful home race for you guys. How's the car feeling though? You seem to be struggling a little bit with pace.
I mean, obviously it's a very new track for everyone because we used to come here every year and know where to go. But now with the new tarmac, the new curbs, it's very different. But it's our job to adapt. And as you said, with this weekend being on the 51 car with both Alessio and Alessandro, we have high hopes. So we're working quietly, and let's hope we can make the highlights later.
Well, this is only free practice. We've got a long way to go. Things can turn around quite easily, I imagine.
Absolutely, and as usual in GT World Challenge, the gaps are really narrow, but around here it's even worse, like 1/10 and you're 10 places behind. So we're on our way, let's say, and we still have some things to improve on this new tarmac. It's the first time we come here. A lot of team has tested here, so step by step.
Vincent Abril, and looking at the charts there, John, Alessio Rivero in that 51 Ferrari, but they're down at the moment in 15th position. They're 3/10 and a bit more, a third of a second down of the pace.
He said if you lose a tenth of a second, you lose about 10 places. There are now 46 cars covered by just under 1 second. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The closeness across a 5.7 kilometer, 3.6 mile circuit. 46 cars covered by just under 1 second.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Right, this is a car that's been going very well. We were talking about Walk and Horse Motorsport. They've got two of their advantages in the top 7 positions, but the 36 with Ben Green at the wheel, showing that car with Tim Creswick and Max Janssen. It's Ben back on board. You talked about him racing Ferraris, but he also races this very well indeed. So they're 4th fastest, a quarter of a second down on the ultimate pace, but again, not on new tyres by looks of things, but lapping consistently a second off the ultimate pace. And that's sort of where you want to be in this test session, I would suggest. No point throwing new rubber at the moment. Looks like he backed off a little bit. He was coming out of the corner just there.
Yeah, Lesmo too, that was.
That's the banking.
I love it, I love it, I love it.
Oh, phenomenal. Now, they must have very grippy soles on their shoes. If you're wearing leather-soled shoes, you'd be sliding down the banking. You think it looks steep, you try walking up it. It's phenomenal. And to think this used to be integrated into a combined circuit in which you use the Grand Prix circuit, and then the continuation of the lap turned slightly closer, sooner to the right, and then you went round the bank oval and then back onto the Grand Prix circuit again. Unbelievable.
Don't ask me about the good old days of Monza, where you combine oval circuit and what you might call road circuit. I mean, what an adventure that must have been, because the banking in the days when it was in period wasn't exactly smooth, and of course cars in those era didn't have the greatest level of grip as well. So it's a bit like riding a rodeo horse, I think, getting around the banking.
Faith. I think you had to have an awful lot of faith there, but you can only race with the current technology. The 333 Ferrari's been going so well, and that's Christian Hook's on board, but the time was set by Felipe Fernandez-Laza. But great to see a different car in a different place, up where you don't normally see it. But again, in this championship, of course, the bronze driver in that car is the one on board, Christian Hook. Oh, getting a little bit late on his braking there. Has a rival right under his rear wing, one of the Lamborghinis, who actually backed off a little bit.
Yeah, but the Lamborghini was getting very close to the rear of the Ferrari. So that's Tim Backlenhoffer in the Bauer Motorsport Lamborghini. So you can run close behind a car, you get a bit of information as to how your car may respond. But it was very interesting, again, Vincent Abril's appraisal of how the personality and character of this Monza circuit has changed from what one might say are relatively minor changes. The big one, obviously, is the track surface, which offers up a different level of grip, and what that does then to how your car might be, the setup, the aero, but the mechanical side of it. But also it's the curbing and the way that you're able to use a little bit more curbing than previously would have been permissible. So 2 changes that are having a significant change to a competitive team like AF Corsa in how they dial their Ferraris in.
And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to understand is about, you can look at a track, it's either grey or black, but unless you're driving, you have no concept about the level of grip. Of course, if all the tails are swinging out on the cars, it's not so grippy, and if they're turning in, but it's about still working so many elements within your suspension to maximise your contact patch with the circuit and wring the most out of it. But at the moment, it's a BMW at the top of the pile, the 991 Century Motorsport car. Toby Sowery now at the wheel. And are we looking? Well, Brutronic haven't had the sweetest of sessions so far with the 96 car stuck in for quite a long time in the garage, but this is the 96 car. Julian Andlauer, well, he's making up for lost time by shortening the circuit, but he got through the gravel. That was important.
He did the right thing. The car was, he realised that he wasn't going to get through the first part, so he just straightened the car up and just gunned it across the gravel. So he cut out the part. If he tried to make the left turn, he would have spun. So again, quick thinking on the part of Andlauer to recover from a moment which could have seen that car embedded in gravel, and then probably a red flag. Just under 15 minutes of this session remaining. So that would have probably seen a very, maybe 5 minutes or so remains if they had had a red flag. There is the drone shot. And again, oh, there must be 2 drones. Or else it's very quick at getting a new position.
Yeah. Maybe have a bit of drone racing later on. But right now, good to see Rinaldi racing at the front end, enjoying their moment in, I was going to say the sun. It's not quite sunny. It's a brightish day, but still cloud cover over Monza. Track temperature keeps on rising. It's 25.5 degrees. That's changing as that's also an element as the crews are getting used to the new surface and how much grip. It's also as the temperature of the track goes up, that changes the whole equation. But for Santalot Racing, their car that's been going so well in the gold class, you can see today 3rd in today's timing in this free practice session, but that car leads on points in their category with this round and the final round, which will bring the 2024 season to conclusion in Saudi Arabia, but that's some distance off Jeddah.
We've got 2 potential race winners here. The number 2 Get Speed Mercedes, and the 48 Winward has just come out of the pits, and that's going to be running behind. So it will be really amusing, if not interesting. Lucas Auer behind the wheel of the 48, and as Jules Gounon behind the wheel of the number 2. As the Kuhn-Lillegar Schumacher Racing, and as Morris Schilling by the wheel.
Yeah, that's
a mirror of what we saw from Lucas Auer.
Yeah, and that's actually the Herbeth Motorsport car. Also,
Julian Andlauer, not Lucas Auer.
Yeah, but again, there's a point at which you bail out. You're pitching into that second chicane, and not quite as straight across, but he certainly changed his angle of attack at that point, the young Dutch guy.
Never a chance, and you know where, of the Porsche entering into. He was so far off to the right, there was just a way. He had no option but to do what he did because his entry was just too late.
So again, looking for movement. In this late moment with just 13 minutes or so remaining in this 2-hour practice session, it's about driver time, track time. It's not really about pace. A few of the crews not yet satisfied. They've put on slightly faster laps recently, but let's celebrate the fact we've again got this amazing 4 manufacturers in the top 4 positions. Aston Martin, the best of those, is down in 4th, and it's not the number 11 car. That's further down the order. It's the number 36 entry from Auckland Motorsport. The 163 Grasser Lamborghini is in 3rd. The Get Speed Mercedes, which is looked at, number 2 is 2nd, and the 991 BMW top of the charts. Right, the car we're looking at now is right down towards the tail. It's Niels Koelen, new driver on board this weekend, young Dutch racer. He's in the number 11 Come To You Racing car, replacing Kobe Powells, who's actually moved across to the sister car, number 12. So even with driver changes, they're not necessarily replacing one another, but shifting around in the championship. But they need to find a bit of pace.
Maybe a bit too late for Kevin Estre, who's in the 22 Porsche. And that was that Kevin Estre that actually ran across the gravel coming into the chicane. Anyway, Kevin Estre is in the 22 Porsche. That car is currently 12th, and his last lap was it was 4 minutes 18. So I don't think that's going to challenge anybody at the front of the field. So interesting to see what Estre might do in his opportunity, his time in that 22. So,
yeah, but
something's changed. No, it's not. It's just the drivers.
What's happened though? No, the number 32 BMW has suddenly moved up. Here we have it on screen, beautifully caught there. Sheldon van der Linde hopped on board. He's 96 thousandths of a second down on the time set long ago by Jake Dennis.
Now, what have they done to that car? They've changed the driver, but believe me, there ain't that difference in time between Sheldon van der Linde, Dries van Thor and Charles Weerts. So I wonder what WRT might have done to this car. Is it simply just a fresh set of rubber, or is there some other magic that we don't know about? They're not going to tell us about either.
They wiped it with the magic sponge, but you know, you'd know that the top teams like Team WRT would have been number crunching while the first driver was out on track. And again, still early days for these crews on this new surface, but Team WRT were 1st and 2nd in a practice session yesterday, and suddenly, right at the sharp end, they've got one of their cars right near the front. The sister car is 10th, Maxime Martin on board.
991 out and back T8.
Okay, still in this late point in this 2-hour free practice session. Drivers running a little bit wide. 998 BMW looking at that now. That's normally at the sharp end of the field. Augusto Farfus is down in 15th place. Just to give you an idea of how close that is to the front, it's 1/3 of a second and yet down in 15th position. But it's still the number 991 BMW top of the pile.
So there is Sheldon van der Linde as we go back to the 9. Yes, the 98, I beg, not the 998. The 998 is the car that is currently quickest. That was a time set by Jake Dennis earlier in the session. So we've got just under 10 minutes to run, and I suspect most people will have exhausted the changes they would like to make, and they'll be thinking now through the lunch break, what do we do? And then go back out on track again. We'll see, I would expect, slightly higher ambient temperature. The track temperature has been hovering around, so it was started off at 20, just over 20 Celsius this morning. It's now up to 24, so it's not gone up dramatically. The big change is the track fundamentally has gotten cleaned up, and there's now a proper race line through all 10 curves here at Monza, and that is in part causing teams scratch their head. Why is our car, which was so well balanced when we were here a year ago, now not working the same way?
Yeah, you've got to have a really clear idea when you go in and then be prepared to deviate from it. But okay, Rover Racing, it's down in 15th position, normally with their 998 entry for Augusto Farfus. Another lap, somewhere nowhere near the pace on that one in particular. 26 Santalot Racing Audi flashing across the screen. Sorry, the 25, the silver car is the 26th. Down into that first turn. But so cars still coming in and out of the pits in this 2-hour free practice session. Majority of the front rows. We've just had that quick lap from Sheldon van der Linde in the number 32 Audi from Team WRT move up. He then reported straight back to the pits, said hello to the team, and has gone back out again. Right, are we going to get through to the end of this session without anyone else dipping their wheels in the gravel? We had that certainly early on, most notably, John, at the exit of the second Lesmo. And in terms of cars actually running off the track, it's been the second chicane that's been their nemesis so far.
So we've got 7 minutes, just under 8 minutes remaining. People are still pushing, but they will be ultimately compromised by how much rubber they have remaining. Now, further improvements come. A Lamborghini, the 19 Lamborghini, is all of a sudden, it's popped up into 3rd position again. Where did that come from? What have the team done? What are the changes that made to suddenly give the 19 Lamborghini? And that's one of the Grasser Racing cars.
Yeah, it's Matteo Lacena. We talked about him earlier, the Guatemalan Italian driver, and he did one quick lap, which moved him up to about 20th. And the next one, bang, suddenly moved up right to be the top, not only the 3rd fastest, but also the fastest of the Lamborghinis. Was it new rubber? Well, we don't know. But anyhow, the pace there, 0.15 of a second down on the ultimate pace. Now he's got traffic, and for everyone else, the session very nearly at conclusion, but it's not stopping people running wide again. Right to the end of the session, we've still got cars running deep through the gravel at various points. That was the Ascari chicane, the middle part of that. That's where we had someone else spinning. This is Matteo Lorena. At the back of that pack, the bright green Lamborghini.
Out and back turn 8.
So that was the 88, and that was Treasure Attempto, and it was Lorenzo Patrese, Leonardo Manuni, or Lorenzo Ferrari. We're not quite sure which of the 3 drivers.
It's Lorenzo Patrese on board. He's in 22nd position.
What will Daddy say?
Well, you know Ricardo very well,
I know
so
Ricardo very well.
Guess, but it would be refined.
Just put it behind your son, get on and get the job done.
Yeah, be a positive racing father. So, right, and every time, but now we're looking at Sergio Sette Camara. You're normally accustomed to seeing him, the Brazilian racer, competing in Formula E, but he's joined the Boots and VDS Mercedes crew down in 32nd position. Don't know if that's his time or that's
55 out and back turn 8.
Gosh, we're getting so many announcements because even at this late point, cars are still running wide. Turn 8, that is the Ascari chicane, and we have seen one car beached down there, but right now it's in and out. This is the corner where that's turn 8, just looking out there, and that's Sergio Sette Camara bouncing over the curbing there. Single-seater racing.
Yeah.
But actually, so far, he's only been competing in a car with a roof in a Porsche Cup cars. And that's inferior in terms of performance to something like this. So big learning curve for him stepping up to GT3 racing.
So those times you're saying are on the best time that car established. Currently, it's 32nd overall. So no possibility, in my view, that it's going to see a further improvement. But it's just run down. We've got, what, 5 minutes to go. So roughly another 2 and a bit, 3 laps, maybe, depending where you cross the line with the timing and scoring clocks. There's the 72 Barwell Lamborghini. Casper Stevenson behind the wheel, 36th place, and that's a Bronze Cup entry, and that's the category that Barwell have fundamentally focused on all the way through, and had great success with these Lamborghinis. Very highly respected operation.
Yeah, Mark Lemmer's crew, they've absolutely focused on that, and they've won championship title after championship title. You say Barwell, you think Lamborghini, you think bronze class, and again, they've made it a very, very happy hunting ground for them. And again, it's just worth pointing out that this is a championship in which we have 4 classes. They all have their place, and certainly you look for outright victory coming from a car in the pro class. We've got 19 of the field, but the next best supported class on the same number of entries, 19 entries, is that bronze class. So very, very competitive, and therefore hard to pick up points. Romain Carton dipping 2 wheels on that CSA Racing Audi out. That was a car that was sitting very well in the very early stages, but the 111 entry, 15th overall, 0.3 of a second down, right in the mix.
They got monstered by Fred Ravish in the Ford Mustang.
Bottom back turn 8.
So we're looking at the Audi directly behind. So in 15th position overall, and he's coming into the pits, I would imagine, at that pace. No, he's decided to stay out. Didn't look a particularly good exit through Parabolica, and he'll go on and do this lap. He can have an option to do a further lap if he wants.
Right.
Waiting to see whether the Ford hasn't. Fred Ravish, I thought there's some improvement coming from the Ford Mustang.
Not yet.
Not yet showing its hand.
Right. I'm just sort of thinking who's done the most laps. I think the most laps is a car that's actually placed very well. I haven't really talked about it. Optimum Motorsports McLaren, Mark Radcliffe at the wheel, 8th overall. They've banged 52 laps in, so they've had a very productive session. Some of the cars have done as few as below 30 laps, which is the 159 McLaren. Of course, Tom Gamble sat in the pit garage for a long time in that early on. Now, who else has befuddled the crowd?
Fog has descended on the exit of Lesmo too. That is fog.
That's unbelievably bad luck. But luckily, we're into the final couple of minutes of this session. That's Ahmed El Hati. That car's had a few sort of moments kicking up the dirt, but that doesn't make it stand out in that department. I think everybody has been pressing to the very edge of the circuit thus far. This is the car that is OQ by Oman Racing alongside the regular Team WRT cars. And again, very much in the mix.
Just watching the cars all, I mean, the difference in straight line performance, it's virtually identical, and even the aerodynamic tow that you might get if you're under the rear wing of the BMW doesn't really give you any advantage in terms of having a good slingshot.
No, so the checkered flag very soon to be proffered. Another 2 minutes, and some playing catch up. The Rutronic Porsche 96 that had been in the pit garage for quite a while being worked on. And Dustin Blackner, that is car 97 from there's a second car from the Rutronic Porsche crew. He's sharing that with Dennis Marshall, and Alexander Fack has moved across to join them this weekend. What an array of cars, 52 cars in all, and believe it or not, we've shown you every single one. So Dustin Blackner, and it's increasing number of American racers coming over to compete in this championship. They've got their own Fanatec GT Series stateside, but you know what, if you're racing these cars, do you not want to race at Monza? Of course you do, John. It's a historic circuit. It's a circuit that if it was put down now, it would be thought to be a great one, but all the history certainly imbues something very special for all of these competitors here. Right into the final handful of moments, 70 seconds to go. It doesn't look as though anybody's going to beat the time of the 991 BMW, and there it is. And certainly it was a very good time. It laid down early on after the little flurry of red flags. Century Motorsport, Darren Lung, Toby Surrey, but the driver who put it down, Jake Dennis. We heard from him, cool, calm, collected. And one thing I like, he said, John, you can always get a tow somewhere around this circuit, and you can.
Yeah, well, you can, but I mean, having said so, there's the potential for it. You've got to be absolutely positioned spot on to make it work, because the overall difference between there's 45, 46 cars up by less than a second. Even though there is a toe, it's got to be a mega toe to really make it work for you.
Again, another
There's that fog
phase.
again.
It's almost like the Nürburgring 24 hours where fog descended and fog did not shift until the 23rd hour of the race. But here in Monza, it's a sort of warmish mid-September day, the start of autumn. Leaves haven't started changing, but track condition, that's been the critical thing for the drivers here on their first visit since the circuit has been resurfaced. They'll all have a story to tell.
Checkered flags.
And the checkered flag is out. 2 hours are completed, and a lot of drivers have got a lot of mileage on their cars in this session. The quick times were set early on, and then I'd say at about the 50-minute mark, after we'd had the drivers getting back up to speed, it was often the second driver in the crew who came in and set the quickest time. But for these cars going down the start-finish straight, they will see the checkered flag. There it is being waved. They'll be back out on track later today, and plenty more action from other championships supporting the GT3, the Fanatec GT. But bragging rights for the 991 BMW. There it is, red, gold and black, and the time of 1 minute 45.087 seconds set by Jake Dennis some while ago. But there's going to be a lot of discussion for the crews when they get back into their pit garages. And we have our cars back out on track for pre-qualifying, a 1 hour session at 2:10, John.
Yes, it gives the crews a little bit of time now to go back and have a chat with all three drivers, or maybe in the case of the RD with Max Hoffer, there's only going to be 2 drivers in that car, and just analyse what they've got. They'll have a myriad of information from all the downloads that are coming back into the pit lane and working through this new surface, the revised curbings and what it's doing. Is it inhibiting something or is it enhancing something? So the fact is, I'm just looking at it, I mean, it's just unbelievable. We've got, it's 40, I think it's 47 cars covered by less than a second.
Yeah, and what we got right at the end, Sandy Mitchell has just put his Barwell Lamborghini up to 4th fastest. He's suddenly gone to under 2 tenths down on the ultimate pace, so he left it late for Barwell Motorsport, the car he shares with Till Bechtel, Scheimer and Anton Dequan. But the bunch of the quick times came a while ago. A few other drivers, Yannick Mettler suddenly improved to 24th position in his Mercedes, and Arjun Maini, the number 77 Mercedes, also a last lap improvement. But the Mustang did end up at the bottom of the pile. Fans in the grandstand, well, you can pick out, I think they're rather keen to be on television, so their ploy has worked, their ruse has worked. But it was BMW from BMW, Lamborghini from Lamborghini, and the best of the Mercedes, the top 5 positions. The 36 Aston Martin looking at there for Walkenhorst Motorsport, that was 7th, with Max Janssen bringing the session to a close. Busy session. And here is the order at the end of it. Jake Dennis setting that quickest time, 1 minute 45.087 seconds. And then the BMW with 1 and 2, because Sheldon van der Linde moved up into second place for Team WRT right near the end, just 1/10 of a second down. And then Matteo Lorena setting 3rd fastest time in his Grasser Racing Team Lamborghini. And right as 2 hours came to an end, Sandy Mitchell put his Lamborghini for Barwell Motorsport up into 4th position. And fastest in the Gold Cup class, Arthur Rougier setting the time right at the start of the day in the Treble 1 Audi. That looked good all session long. It's one of the cars that dipped a wheel in the gravel, but it wasn't alone in that. And its time eventually puts it very, very much in the mix. In the top 20, but just half a second down. In the Silver Cup class with that 3rd quickest time, Matteo Reina. Good for 3rd overall, so that is looking competitive in the Silver Cup class with Baptiste Moulam and Artem Petrov alongside him. Top in Pro was the car that was 2nd quickest, Sheldon van der Linde setting the 2nd quickest time in the car shares with Dries van Tor and Charles Weerts, but it was a bronze class car that was top of the pile. Jake Dennis setting the best time, 1 minute 45.087 of a second, just under 1/10 of a second clear of the field. All 52 runners set a time with a slightly troubled time for the Mustang, the one and only Mustang in the field, bringing up the back of the field. But you can be sure they will be finding time in the next session. But there it is. Look, 47 cars in under a second from pole position. So that's the free practice session. Come to a conclusion. And let's take a look at some super slow-mo shots. And that was the quickest car today. 2 hours. So BMW's 1st and 2nd, Lamborghini's 3rd and 4th. Mercedes in 5th, but that will all change when we get to our next session, and that's coming up later today.